That time an American was reincarnated into another world. By S.P. Forda. It's not always the Asians who get icegade. Very rarely does an American get icegade, though the icegade gods have reasons for that. It's time for John to remind them of those reasons. John Cooper was playing his favorite game. Kicked back on an old leather chair while surrounded by his posters and football gear, his eyes flashed with the scenes of war that played out on the screen before him. Blood flew as miniguns and rockets drew explosions, lighting up his vision. Good old-fashioned American violence is what his father called things like this. Not that it meant anything to John. It was just a game he liked. Given a few months he might move on to another. It happened one day when he was on the road. Driving through a city, John spotted, as usual, a large semi-truck hauling some cargo. While drive up to a red light, he pondered. I've seen some of those European and Japanese trucks. Why are they so puny compared to ours? Although, considering Texas is damn near the size of Europe, I can see why. Bigger places begets bigger trucks. He hummed with sound logic, but then, as he watched the truck barrel down the road, he felt something was off. It was going way too fast. Shit, is that thing gonna stop? He panicked, and then, he saw the truck barrel through 5 cars in front of it, throwing them out of the way. Oh shit. It's not gonna stop. He cursed as he watched the truck turn in his direction. He could hear the roar of its engine, and it was going way too fast to evade. He prayed it would swerve out of the way, as a head-on collision would kill not just him, but several others instantly. And then, it happened. The truck transformed into a robot, jumping on its feet and roaring in his face. It's ice guy time, motherfucker. John watched as the semi-truck robot jumped high into the air and came falling down with a diving elbow drop, as if it were some kind of pro wrestler. He sat there baffled. What the fuck? Boom. And everything went dark. Gah. I couldn't help the scream as I jumped from the floor. My breathing was rough as I looked around, and I found my new surroundings to be both unpleasant and soothing. Hills of grassland spread as far as my eye could see. It was a bright sunny day with a cool breeze that served to calm me down. But I still didn't know where I was. Combined with the shocking experience with that robot truck, I wasn't exactly in the right frame of mind. I slowly stood, assessing my condition, which was perfectly fine. In fact, I felt great, as if I had been rejuvenated. I gradually calmed down. But then, I suddenly felt my hands start burning. Ack! Damn! I clutched my wrist and saw what was happening. It was like a tattoo was being seared onto the back of my right hand. I saw a ring of 13 stars appear. Huh? These stars, they're kind of like the Betsy Ross flag. I guess it's not the worst tattoo to get, but damn did that hurt. I rubbed the ring of stars. The pain had luckily faded. It just felt tender now. But this still doesn't help me. Where the hell am I? I was worried as I saw nothing but grasslands. I didn't know where I was or how the hell I got here. After a while though, I just started walking. I walked for close to 2 hours in a single direction, seeing nothing but grasslands and the occasional patch of trees. After getting over a hill though, I suddenly saw signs of civilization. Village. I jumped when I saw the structures in the distance. There was also farmland, and I could see people moving around. But it was a village, which is what worried me. Where on earth did villages still exist? I guess if it's Ohio or something where all of 3.5 people live. But how did I get to Ohio? I mumbled while walking toward the village. But as I got closer, I noticed more and more oddities. For instance, the rough stone houses, the medieval clothing of the residents, the water well in the center of the village that was actually being used. Amish? I smiled weirdly, walking into the bounds of the village. I naturally caught several eyes, many people keeping their distance. I was like some kind of exotic animal that they were all wary of. And at least they weren't speaking Spanish or something. I could understand them fine, though their accents were different. Hey, you. I reached out and tapped a man's shoulder who was passing by with hurried steps. He jumped and turned around, looking at me with caution. I rolled my eyes, thinking he was just a condescending ass. Can you tell me where this is? Like what state and city? I must go. He had a strange smile as he dodged my question and walked away. Dude, seriously? I thought the Amish were nice. Whatever. I sighed before walking further in. And after catching enough attention, I was finally approached by a tall man with a full beard. He seemed like a man of authority, so I smiled in relief. Hello, sir. Greetings, traveler. What brings you to this humble village? Yeah, I'm lost. I scratched my head. Can you tell me what state we're in? State? Yeah, or city? I'm sorry, but the nearest city isn't for a few dozen miles. To the north you'll find the city of Halesburg. Halesburg? Where am I? In Europe? Never mind, do you have a phone that I can use? I lost mine. A phone? He looked at me with a dumb face, and suddenly I was a bit more skeptical about my situation. I narrowed my eyes. Hey, what year is it? I believe the calendar year is 622, Sir Traveler. 622. Ah, shit. I remembered the words of that insane robot truck. Did I seriously? Damn it. What the hell is this? Fucking. Hey, what the hell is this anyway? I suddenly brought up the back of my right hand and pushed it to the guy's face. After being flustered, he concentrated and saw the 13-star ring. Then, his eyes bulged. Oh, esteemed Magus. Forgive my rudeness. The hell? I was baffled as the man fell to his knees, the others with him following suit. What are you doing? I'm terribly sorry for not realizing sooner, Great Magus. What the hell is a Magus? I'm sorry? He raised his head, seeing my irked face. I'm asking what the hell a Magus is. A Magus is one who had been blessed by the Holy Ghost. That crest is the sign of your blessing, and it grants you special power. Oh? What special power? I don't know, Great Magus. All I know is, there are 3 types of magi. The warlocks, the summoners, and the knights. Which one your crest makes you, I can't know. Is that right? So I've been brought to a primitive magical fairy land. Fantastic. I sighed while wrapping my head around my situation. I was seriously murdered by a robot semi-truck and dropped into this world. A place where I had no friends, no family, not so much as an acquaintance besides this man who was probably the village chief. I was all alone, with nobody to rely on, in a new place that I hadn't the slightest clue about how it worked. The only thing that gave me any reassurance was this crest on my hand. The reality hit me, and for a long moment, I processed it all. And then, I closed my eyes. Fuck it. It is what it is. Hey, village chief. Yes? The man rose to his feet cautiously. I spoke with a deadpan face. How do I get to the city? It was 3 days later that I realized I may have misspoken. When I had said city, I meant the nearest city. But apparently the village chief thought I meant the damn capital city at the center of whatever kingdom we were in. Well, at least travel was fast. Besides the crest, it was the village chief who introduced me to the first fantastical thing that confirmed this wasn't Earth. Our rides to the city were on giant birds with saddles on their backs. These things had a wingspan of at least 20 meters, and they were more than capable of flying with cargo. With only some essentials, the village chief and I each jumped on a bird and took off. And I must say, that was the second scariest thing that's happened to me besides the freak robot truck murder. To soar in the sky 3,000 feet above the ground was thrilling. Even after 3 days of travel, I didn't get bored of the sights of landscapes that we passed over. And then, we arrived at the city. And it was something else. I thought it was going to be a run-down stone forest with dull gray colors and primitive living conditions. But it seemed this magic shit was more prevalent than I thought. There was a single giant tower that stood in the center of the city, a tower that rose hundreds of meters in the air with flying mounts like birds and carriages landing on pads across its body. It was a magic tower no matter how I looked at it, with a body of night blue stone and a top of sparkling crystal. And next to it was a grand palace formed of marble and gold, no doubt where the king and queen of the kingdom lived. It was called the Kingdom of Dragon's Tongue, and according to the village chief, it was the best magic kingdom in the world. Of course, living in a village constrained his worldview, so I wasn't sure how valid that statement was. Still, anything was new to me, so I didn't care. If anything, I was enraptured by the mystical sights and atmosphere of the city. We landed on the outskirts of the city where the wall was, touching down outside the gate where hundreds of people constantly came and went. I let the chief approach the guards who manned an outpost, and he talked for me. Good sirs, I come with a guest who doesn't have citizenship. He would like to apply. As I had told the chief about how I was a foreigner with no background, he knew what to help me with. Temporary visas are 50 coin, and you must head to customs in order to apply for citizenship. Here. The chief paid the 50 coin, and he was easily handed a card, which he passed to me. After that, we entered the city. I glanced at the man who led me. I'll pay you back, once I get my hands on some money. Oh, no worries at all, John. He waved. Honestly, the only reason I was letting him do anything for me was because I had nothing to my name and no direction to go. I was in a desperate situation, so I could only leech off this man. But I wasn't going to let this go without reimbursement. His goodwill would be repaid, someday. So you said I should enter the magisterium? Yes. There you'll be able to find a path in life, one that hinges on your crest. It's the most prestigious institution in the kingdom that accepts just about every magus, at least for the first year. I had been briefed on this magisterium, which was basically a magic college. It was a place that taught magic to all three types of magi. It taught the warlocks how to spell cast, the summoners how to summon, and the knights how to fight. But of course, it did all this for a reason. And that was to fight the existential threat of the world. They were called the Scourge, a non-human race of humanoids and beasts that sought nothing but the destruction of humanity. Humanity had been at war with them for hundreds of years, but year after year, the battles only got worse, and the contenders only got stronger. The kingdom of Dragon's Tongue was one of two kingdoms that fought the Scourge. The other kingdom was one that the chief knew nothing about. So, with the ever-present threat on their doorstep, the magisterium was the world's leader in churning out powerful magi for the cause. And it would be my first step forward in this crazy world. You won't be able to join immediately though. There are about 5 months before the new year starts and entries are accepted. Huh? So what do I do for 5 months? Well, the chief looked around as we walked through the city. Plenty of shops, and bills didn't pay themselves. I sighed. I guess I better find a job. Don't worry, there's always work to find in this place. I'll stay with you for a few days until you find one, and then I'll need to head back to my village. Thank you, Chief. Hey, kid. My head spun to the right at the sudden shout, my eyes landing on a man who seemed to run one of the shops. He leaned on the doorway as he eyed me, his mouth chewing on a small toothpick. You looking for work? Depends. I crossed my arms, prompting him to lay out the offer. I'm a delivery man, and I need more runners. You get paid by the job, and the schedule isn't uptight like other jobs. I'll even give you a starting bonus, since you seem to be new here. Huh. What do you think, Chief? I glanced at the chief, who was rubbing his beard. Then, he shrugged. It's up to you, John. It's either that or working in a bakery or a store as a counter clerk. I guess I'll take this then. Alright guy, I accept. I walked over, and as shaking hands seemed to be the symbol it was on earth, I shook the stranger's hand. He smiled. The name's Plex. John. Come inside, John. I'll show you what we do here. Alright. I nodded, but before leaving, I turned back to the chief. I don't think you need to wait for me, Chief. I might as well stick around for a day or so. The capital is fun to visit. John, if you need anything, find me at the Moonlight Inn. Right. Thanks, Chief. You've helped me more than you know. It was nothing, John. Now go on. You know where to find me. He waved me off, so I went with Plex into the shop. Thus began my first job in this new world. Plex walked me into what seemed like a small warehouse. The only issue I had with it though was how the entire building gave off a bad vibe. My intuition was something I trusted, not that it was the ultimate tool of prophecy. But it had kept me out of bad situations and away from psycho girls in the past, so I learned to run with it. This job is rather simple. We receive delivery orders on that wall right there, and you can choose the jobs you take. When you take a job, you're required to grab a package from the client and deliver it to the recipient. You're also required to collect money, or whatever form of payment designated by the job, from the recipient, delivering that money back to the client. And we obviously earn a portion of that money. Yeah, those words only added to the bad vibe I got from this whole place. Was this drug running? Well, only if the products were drugs. Any questions? What if the customer doesn't want to pay? I asked that question knowing what kind of answer I was gonna get. Plex smiled. Well, those customers only need a bit of persuasion, that's all. They all cough it up at the end of the day. I won't toss you into the wild to fend for yourself though. You'll shadow me on the first few, just to get an idea. Fuck it, why not? Might as well try something new. Haha, that's the spirit. But first. He looked me up and down. Let's get you a new set of clothes. I don't know where you came from, but those clothes aren't very normal. Heh. I chuckled and looked down. I had been wearing a t-shirt and sweats when I died, clothing that definitely didn't exist here. And although the colors were only white and gray, they still stood out. I needed to fit in with this place, so I accepted Plex's offer and went to a nearby shop. It seemed like suit-like attire was common in this world. At least, in the cities of this world. Standard dress was pants, long sleeves, a vest, and some hard leather shoes. Thankfully this world's fashion industry was developed, so I wasn't uncomfortable in anything. And I looked decent. I definitely blended with the rest of the populace now. The only thing I wasn't so accustomed to was the pair of gloves that Plex insisted I wore. They were fingerless leather gloves, and they were apparently meant to cover my crest. Since I understood that my crest might not necessarily be something to show off easily, I agreed and made the gloves a part of my regular clothing. Besides that, I kept my old clothes with me. They were the only memento of Earth that I had now. And after our shopping trip, Plex went and pulled a job off the wall for us. The most challenging thing for you will be learning the layout of the city. You have to know where to go if you want to deliver things. And these jobs need to be completed in a timely manner. We don't like to keep our clients waiting, especially if it's a rush order. Alright. So how should I go about learning? Simple. Through experience. Don't worry, you'll pick everything up over time, so long as you stick with the job. Well, I only have 5 months before I plan to enter the magisterium. So until then, I'll do my best. Sketchy or not, I had seen what the various jobs on the wall paid, and it seemed like good money. I could earn hundreds of coin per job, and I could complete quite a number in a single day. Of course, if things really did get dangerous, then I planned to leave. I wasn't gonna get caught up in some underground war after getting on the bad side of a mob boss. And I had a feeling such a thing was very possible. Alright, go ahead and grab the package. We'll start our first job now. Plex handed me the job paper, and I looked at the package identifier on it. In another part of the warehouse was a series of shelves, each one with various boxes and containers. Some were medium-sized, and others were small enough to be held in a hand. I found the box I needed, a medium-sized wooden crate that needed both arms to carry. After I grabbed it, we both left the warehouse and made our way down the streets. As we walked, I observed my surroundings. Most of the buildings were at least 3 stories tall. The streets were wide, the alleys narrow and dark, and as it was getting to be evening, light posts started glowing with radiance. For a while the walk was dull. Just another boring street, some residential, others commercial with restaurants or bakeries. It was nothing I hadn't seen before. But then, Plex led me into a large plaza. And the whole place lit up. Fairy dust here. 2 ivory horns for 300 coin. Handcrafted silver blades made by the Golden Warlock. 10-hour smoked yak meat, get it fast. It was a plaza full of booths and shops with open walls, with over 1,000 people either hawking their wares or haggling down prices. Floating lights lit up the surroundings as if they were alive, and I could see all the exotic items that were being traded. From grand sets of armor to small animals for pets, it seemed like you could find anything you wanted here. Welcome to the Golden Trading Post. Hundreds of merchants fight to come here and sell their wares, and thousands of people drop many millions of coin here on the weekly. Only when the sun falls does this place come alive. But of course, the only people who come here are chumps who spend their money on overpriced garbage. Plex snickered, and then he brought me to a shop. It seemed just as busy as all the others, selling all kinds of savory food that made my mouth water. But we didn't come here for food. Instead, upon entering, the shopkeep saw Plex and beamed with a wide smile. Plex, I haven't seen you in a while. I thought you had quit the business. Ha, like that'll ever happen. I was just looking for an apprentice to help me, and I found John here. He pat my shoulder, and the shopkeep looked me over. Back on Earth, I played college sports and was in the prime of my life. At 22 years old I was over 6 feet tall and proudly chiseled with large muscles. Even Plex was only taller than me. In fact, everyone in this world seemed to have an average height of 6 foot, so I didn't stand out much in that arena. But I was still built like a wall, and the shopkeep nodded with approval. He looks strong. And he's a magus, huh? He looked me over, his words confusing me since I had my crest covered by my gloves. How did he know I was a magus? Plex only nodded. That he is, but not a certified one. He'll be joining the magisterium this upcoming year. I see. Well, John, so long as you're not stupid and know when to respect the right people, you'll keep your head. Don't make yourself an enemy, and you'll remain immune. And who knows, maybe someone will take a liking to you and you'll get to make a connection. Magi always need friends, and not just in high places. He slapped my shoulder with a toothy grin before waving the two of us to the back of the shop. Head on in. And the next time you come through, just give my name. I'm Chef Black. Thank you, Chef. I gave the guy a smile and nod, and weaving through the store, we came upon a hidden door that led into a dark tunnel. If I still had any doubt in my mind, I didn't anymore. Walking through the dry dark tunnel made of paved stone, we came upon another door. Plex knocked once, and a hatch opened revealing a pair of eyes. Gavin. Oh, it's Plex. Who's the new guy? The pair of eyes widened before looking at me. A new recruit. I'm teaching him the ropes. Fun. He hummed before closing the hatch and opening the door. Gavin, a heavy-set man who was taller than even Plex, welcomed us in. Have a safe trip. Always. Plex smiled as he led me in. I couldn't help a wry smile. Music, lights, hot women, and men with a ring on each finger. The festive yet moody atmosphere, along with the thick scent of heavy alcohol, told me all I needed to know about this place. Where there's light, there's darkness. Welcome to the black market. Where there's no rules except the ones you make. Plex laughed and brought me along. As I walked, I saw three things. First, a fight that broke out between two men with broadswords. In only 3 seconds the fight was decided as one man had his right arm taken off. Second, a store full of caged beasts that were as massive as they were ferocious. Apparently they could be bought as companions. And third, a brothel with nude women at the doorway and heavy smoke that wafted out, creating a flowing fog at their feet. As the freest market in the city, there's nothing you can't find here. They have everything from slaves to the hardest drugs. They also have the best and most powerful gear a magus can buy. You'll do good to remember that in the future. The kingdom allows all this? I was quite shocked by it all. Sure, I knew that these places existed, but on Earth, it all existed online, or behind closed doors that nobody knew existed. But here, it was basically out in the open. I could see the night sky above. We seemed to be within an area that was enclosed by the backs of buildings around it. Plex laughed. Allow it? Sure, on paper they abhor this kind of stuff. But there's 2 reasons that nobody touches the black market. 1, because every powerful magus has a hand in this dark place. And 2, his voice fell. Because the last person to try and destroy this place was murdered in his sleep. You don't fuck with the black market. Yeah. I sighed. This new job of mine was turning out to be interesting. We're here. After walking through many alleyways, we finally approached our destination. Since the box you're carrying is a light package, it was dropped at our delivery center. These jobs are easier since you just need to take them straight to the recipient instead of grabbing the package from the client. Still, we'll need to collect the money, and those who receive light packages that aren't worth much tend to enjoy giving us a hard time. Let's see if this one is one of those people. Plex smiled before knocking on the door to a dark building. Who is it? The door opened, revealing a really skinny girl who looked malnourished. Smoke also bellowed out of the doorway, giving off an incredibly strong odor that made me frown. We have a delivery. For Mr. Hallie. Oh. Hey, Hallie. The moonshine is here. Finally. The girl yelled, prompting another man to come to the door. I spotted a long pipe in his mouth for smoking, and whatever plant he put into it glowed a silvery white when it was burned. It resembled the radiance of the moon, causing me to narrow my eyes at the box in my hands. I'm a drug runner now. Go ahead and put the box inside. The man waved, but I didn't move anywhere. Plex smiled. I'll need to see the money, if you don't mind. I'll get it, just put the box inside. Plex was silent, simply standing there with a small smile on his face. It caused the man's face to fall. He snarled and drew a knife, but Plex was right there with him, a short sword appearing in his hand. Let's not make this difficult, friend. Otherwise I'll take more than just your money. Tisk, ass-licking piece of. The man's voice faded as he headed inside. When he came back, he threw a sack at Plex's face. When he caught it, I finally handed off the box. Pleasure doing business. Just get the fuck off my doorstep. Slam. I recoiled a bit at the door in my face. Plex chuckled as we walked away. Most of the lightweights are like that. But so long as you don't give them any room, they'll back off. And if they really want to fight, you just have to make sure you win. Then you can take a little bonus along with the payment. I have 2 questions. Ask away. Plex counted money as I asked. First, what are lightweights and light packages? What you just delivered was a large batch of moonshine, which is a common drug the guy was smoking. Light packages are packages that contain common or low-value goods, and lightweights are the people who deal in those goods. On the contrary, it's the heavyweights you want to be careful with. Dealing with those people is just as rewarding as it is risky. Valuable cargo, high payment, but those people are similarly dangerous. I'll take you on a heavyweight tomorrow. Okay. I got the concept, and at the same time was now looking forward to tomorrow. Now second. If that guy insisted on fighting, why would you only take a little bonus instead of everything he's good for? Haha, quite the ruthless question. And I get it, but there's a special reason we don't ruin these little runts. Plex nodded as he finished counting the money, stuffing the sack into his coat. It's wise to never take more than you're worth. Not only does it ruin our reputation, but it can invite trouble. It's a principle of mercy that I've always employed, and it's led to more business and fewer enemies. Besides, I don't care about whatever small stash of money that deadbeat was hiding. As delivery men, we're above that. This trade of ours is a special one, so act like it. He smacked my chest, causing me to smile. After that, we delivered the money to a drug dealer who let us take our fee directly. He didn't even bother to check. It would have been easy to sneak away with a few extra coin, but as Plex said, we're above that. And what was a few extra bucks, when we could continue to receive this man's business? It seemed like common knowledge, but Plex told me that I'd be surprised by the amount of idiots who ruin everything for a bit of extra cash. Clink. I jumped when Plex tossed a sack of coin at my chest. Your payment for the job. This is the entire fee. I looked inside. The fee was close to 200 coin, and all of it was in the sack. It's fine. Consider it a starting bonus. I was silent as I glanced at the man. He was being good to me. He got me clothes, a job that could pay well, and was giving me this bonus. But as I had discovered, anybody doing this kind of business wasn't someone to easily trust. You couldn't trust even the strangers walking past you. Maybe they were out to steal the sack of coin in your pocket. So after I sobered myself, washing out all the thoughts of how fantastical all these experiences were, I brought forward my skepticism. Plex noticed as I stopped walking, turning around and looking at me with a raised brow. Something wrong? You take the coin. I tossed the sack back at him. I don't need to be in your debt. Put that toward the bill for my clothes. Oh? Ha ha ha. He started laughing, taking a few seconds to calm down. Getting skeptical, are we? I will admit, you shouldn't trust anybody in the black market. But unfortunately, you're already in my debt, and 200 coin isn't going to change that much. At least have enough to get a room and feed yourself. He threw the sack back at me. And hey. He continued before I could. You don't have to trust me, John. You're a magus, right? Figure out what power you have, and then you can keep yourself safe from any schemes I might be planning. Your own ability is what determines everything else. And besides, I couldn't care less about 200 coin. Now come on, I want to get one more job done before the day ends. Seeing him walk off, I sighed. And I followed, deciding that I would work on whatever my magic was when I got the chance. After another job, I learned that I would be working in the night as a delivery man. The black market operated at all hours of the day, but only at night did the true doors of darkness open. Basically, we delivery men weren't supposed to operate during the day. The daytime was when we received orders, and when night came, we fulfilled them. So my sleep schedule needed to be flipped, which wasn't too difficult of a change. When the second job of my first night was completed, I went to a hotel that Plex recommended me. I paid for 3 days, which cost 30 coin, and fell asleep as soon as I hit the crappy bed. Since I finished the second job only an hour before the sun came up, I didn't wake up until well beyond noon. I didn't have a clock, but jobs couldn't start until sunset, which was in another few hours. So in my room, I decided to take a quick look at my crest. After the tattoo was formed on my hand, I hadn't felt anything from it since. 13 stars sitting on my hand and looking pretty. No amount of feeling or meditation activated it. There wasn't some mystical energy that I could feel and control. There was nothing. Right now, it really was just a tattoo. That magisterium probably knows how to activate it. But that's 5 months away. I'll just need to keep trying and see if anything happens. There's no way this is here for nothing. I refused to believe that I was unable to use my crest, so in that case, I just needed time to experiment. The hotel I stayed at had a restaurant, so after getting food to eat I headed back out to the warehouse. When I arrived, the sun was beginning to set. And inside the warehouse, I found not only Plex, but another man. Ah, John. You're early. Yeah. This is Libitus. He's one of our few co-workers. Hello. Libitus waved, and I nodded to him. When I approached, Plex smacked my shoulder. Good news, I just got an order from a heavyweight, one of our premium clients. It'll be our first run of the day. After that, I'll come with you on a few more lightweights, see if you can't handle things on your own. I'm fine with delivering, but my biggest issue is still directions. I don't know where anything is. I voiced my most obvious concern. I couldn't learn the layout of the black market or the city in only 2 days. Plex smiled. That's actually why I called Libitus here. He has a map detailing all the information you need to know. Here. The man walked over to a table. I looked over his shoulder as he unfurled a map. It turns out the black market was bigger than I thought. There were actually 2 of such markets that spanned several blocks. And those 2 markets had very specific entry and exit points. The food shop Plex took me through was one such entry point, and in that market, there were only 4 entrances. Libitus explained. There are 2 markets. The one you went to last night is the Founders Black Market. That market is separated into 4 districts, each owned by 4 heavyweight mafias. We have a contract with 2 of those mafias that let us handle some of their sensitive cargo. Plex nudged me smugly before Libitus continued. All our deliveries are marked with the district, the block, the street, and the building number. Most buildings in the market are given a number. Oh, and a little advice, don't mess around with the unmarked buildings unless you want to get your head taken off. The only reason you go near them is if you have a delivery to one. Those buildings are almost always owned by the mafias. And if they aren't, then they're owned by someone you really don't want to fuck with, because those guys can fuck with the mafias. Anyway. Libitus rolled his eyes at Plex. Just know what district you're in, keep an eye on the block numbers and streets, and you can find your way. Things are pretty orderly in the black market, contrary to popular belief. Yeah, you don't let savages handle expensive things. Plex chuckled, and after he packed the map, he stuffed it in my arms. Keep it with you and use it when needed, but do me a favor and don't make yourself look like a tourist. It attracts unwanted attention. And speaking of, you'll need this. Plex reached into his coat and grabbed a sheath. It contained a large knife, one that was worn with usage. A simple knife, but good enough so long as you don't get on the bad side of a magus. Just know that nobody wants to get cut, so as long as you don't push a fight, it probably won't happen, and you can get your way. At the end of the day, all you need is payment. Now. Plex looked up toward the roof, seeing a small window that showed the darkening sky. We should get going. I like to please our clients with prompt service. He waved me along, leaving Libitus to grab a few packages and do his own work. We made our way to the golden trading post that was already beginning to surge with activity. And when we made it to the restaurant that Chef Black operated, he tossed me a large kebab that held several chunks of savory meat. Thanks, Chef. Haha, just watch your back in there. The large man smiled, and we passed through. Our destination was deep inside the black market, specifically one of the 4 corners that was home to the core of our heavyweight client. The Tavera family. They were identified by their saber crest. Most of the members carried an actual saber with special engravings, making them easy to pick out. At first their territory was crowded with people and business. It seemed nice, like an eternally festive atmosphere of civilized debauchery. But as we got deeper, all that faded rather quickly. Instead, we encountered luxurious buildings and more members who roamed the streets with tasks of their own. Many of the buildings had their interiors completely sealed, but Plex told me that they were home to some of the best products one could buy. Apparently they also manufactured special drugs, but nobody knew where. Along the way, we ended up being stopped a few times, but Plex's identity got us through every time. It seemed delivery men really were special. And soon, we arrived at the home of the Tavera family. A large manor with armored guards out front, including rows of tall torches that illuminated a red pathway to the front door. We walked up, and I stopped with Plex outside the front door. Soon enough, the door opened, and we were greeted by a surprisingly beautiful woman. She smiled at Plex, speaking with a soothing voice. Plex, we appreciate your timely arrival. Haha, of course, Parif. Who is your guest? Parif looked at me curiously. I kept my cool as best I could and simply smiled. Plex talked for me. This is my apprentice, John. I'm teaching him, so I hope his presence won't be much of a bother. No, it's not. Come in. She opened the door and ushered us in. I looked around as my feet hit the stone floor. The entire place was lit up with bright yellow floating lights, casting a warm glow on the gold and red interior. Golden pillars had pictures of warriors and battles depicted on them, and the red floor looked like marble that had been dyed red. 2 staircases went from the center of the room and sloped upward, leading into other halls. Parif led us up one of the stairs and through a hall, coming upon a set of mahogany double doors. After knocking twice, she waited about 4 seconds before opening. What was revealed was a study, and a single man who sat behind a massive desk. He lifted his head from the book in front of him, smiling at Plex and giving me a curious glance. Plex, and a guest? Yes, Patriarch Tavera. This is my apprentice. Oh, thinking of retiring soon? The man spoke with a sultry voice, and I observed him as Plex smiled as if embarrassed. The man had a very clean mustache that he occasionally twisted the end of. His hair was slicked back, and his suit was kept prim and proper. Patriarch Tavera turned his gaze from Plex to me. What's your name, boy? John, sir. Mm. And you're a magus? Like previously, he managed to guess my little secret without even seeing the crest on my hand. I nodded. Yes, but I have yet to figure out how to use my power. I plan on enrolling in the magisterium when they open. Ah, I see. I wish you luck. Let me see your crest. Okay. Slipping off my glove, the patriarch saw the 13 stars on the back of my hand. He sighed. A summoner, HM? In that case, a difficult road lies in front of you. A summoner? I couldn't help but question confusedly. The patriarch nodded his head toward my hand. Your crest. Those crests with pointed symbols on them, like stars, triangles, anything with edges, are the indicators of a summoner. You're no doubt a summoner. Unfortunately, summoners also have the most difficult time within the magisterium. They are very often outclassed by the warlocks and knights. The man raised his right hand, revealing a crest of abstract lines, as if it had been slashed by a blade many times. These line crests are the indicators of a knight, which I am. We specialize in bodily enhancement, like speed, strength, endurance, regeneration, and more. My Tavera family is a family of knights, and we often come into conflict with the other mafias because of that. And while we're on the topic of other families, I should brief you on your delivery order. The patriarch suddenly opened a drawer of his desk, retrieving a small wooden box. He eyed Plex. This box contains a message for our fiery friends at the Clockwork Institution. The Warlock Mafia? He placed the box on the edge of the desk. Take it to them at this arranged meeting spot, and report back here when all is said and done. Understood. We'll be back before morning comes. Good. And take this deposit too. Plex grabbed the box, a small slip of paper, and a bag of coin. With that, he stowed them and bowed. As we turned to leave, he spoke once more. Oh, and John. I turned, seeing the patriarch's small smile. Come back, and I'll put in a word with the Polaris family. Thank you, patriarch. Although both good and bad feelings rose up within me, I simply nodded and thanked him. After that, Plex and I left the manor of the Tavera family, taking to the streets. Plex sighed as we walked, causing me to voice my concerns. When he said come back, it means this may not be a smooth delivery. He scratched his head. The Clockwork Institution is at odds with the Tavera family. So whatever this message is, if they don't take it well, they may decide to kill us. Of course, we won't sit back and die so easily, and the patriarch isn't one to screw me over. That's why there's a meeting spot in neutral territory. Still, I don't know if I can fight a bunch of wizards. I mumbled. Warlocks were all spellcasters. If this went south, I expected fireballs to come my way, and I don't know how prepared I was to face that. Plex smacked my back. Hey, don't worry so much. Remember, warlocks take a few seconds to prepare their spells. If these guys really are going to try anything, we have a window to run away. Just don't remain in an open area with them while at a distance. That just makes you a target. Right. I sighed as we continued to take turns down various streets. And finally, we arrived at an unmarked warehouse. It looked incredibly worn down, with foliage hanging across rusted metal walls and broken down infrastructure. We slipped through a destroyed door that was hanging on its hinges, entering what looked like the ruins of a small factory. There were some large machines that hadn't seen the light of day in years and storage shelves scattered throughout the place. Only in the center was there an open clearing. It was there that we met our wizard friends. 3 of them, all draped in robes, not bothering to hide the symbol of what I assumed was the Clockwork Institution on their chests. Their symbol was that of gears and interconnected circuits, looking like a complex machine. And each of our contacts were carrying themselves with confidence, not likely to be mere goons of the institution. Plex greeted them with friendliness, as was standard in this line of business. Hello, my friends from the Dash. Where's the message? He was interrupted by the warlock in the middle, the one who seemed to be the leader with slightly more luxurious robes than the other 2. Plex continued to smile while retrieving the wooden box. He handed it off to the one on the right, who opened it before handing it to the leader. The leader looked into the box for a long while, his expression not changing in any way. Instead, he slowly brought out what was inside. A finger, with a ring around its severed base. It had long dried, and the sight caused my face to scrunch. "Do you know what this is?" "Sorry sirs, but we're just the messengers. The details and context of the product delivered are not our concern. They should be," the leader muttered, his tone falling, and his words causing me to go on guard. Even Plex lost a bit of his friendliness as he asked. "Sirs, the head of the Tavera family would like a response." "Ah, geez." Plex sighed, turning to me with a wry smile. "Sorry kid, maybe I should have left you. Let's do our best, okay?" "Okay?" My heart sunk as I cautiously responded. And before I was able to react, I saw Plex's leg swing out, his foot crashing into my chest with insane force. My body was suspended in the air. As I felt the air rush out of my lungs, I could see a flash of light from the direction of the warlocks. Fireballs, just as I had worried about. They crashed in the place where I was. With Plex's kick I was safe, my body landing in the midst of storage shelves. Plex also disappeared. Adrenaline shot through my body as I heard the explosion. Not long after, I heard Plex's voice echo amongst the ruined factory. "Get going, kid. And don't stop for anything. Ack." I grunted while struggling to breathe. Still, knowing how dangerous things had turned, I crawled to my feet and headed deeper into the ruins. "Get them. Their corpses will be our response to the piece of shit at Tavera." I heard the leader's voice reverberate. And not long after, I saw a light flash through the shelf I was behind. I threw my body, barely avoiding the explosion that toppled the shelf and sent debris flying behind me. "We got this one, sir." "Fine. I'll get the other slippery bastard." "Shit." I heard those words while scrambling in another direction, cursing inwardly at my luck. It seemed I would need to run away from two wizards. My lungs were still desperately heaving for air as I ran between all the shelves and machines that served as obstacles. I took my time, and only occasionally did a fireball come hurtling in my direction. Every time it happened I was forced to jump out of the way, and a few times I was still hit by debris, my body becoming a bit battered. It only served to wake me up though. With the help of adrenaline, I felt myself become hyper-aware, every sound and color being used to indicate where the two wizards were. However, I was only able to tell where one of them was, and that's because he was the one launching the fireballs. The second one though. Walking amidst the storage shelves, there was a long period of silence. I kept my steps as quiet as possible, my breathing light despite how tired I already was. But then, I turned a corner and I saw a figure. My heart jumped, another surge of adrenaline overcoming me as I saw the robed man wave his hand. Colors bloomed as white lines were drawn in the air before him. His fingers traced the air, creating circuits that traveled between gears which manifested in cyclical formations. It looked like the symbol of the Clockwork Institution. Gears, circuits, symbols, all of them coming together in what I only assumed was a spell. And it only took a few seconds before I saw the air distort. In the corner of my eye as well, I could see another flash of light, the sign of another fireball. My avenues were cut off. One in front, one behind. Those few seconds felt so long, but right as the spell of the warlock in front of me flashed, my shirt was suddenly yanked, my body being pulled to the side. I watched as I was pulled through the brittle metal wall of the warehouse, fragments scraping my clothes and skin. Then, I was stopped on the street. I heard Plex's voice. "Start running. That one's an air specialist. Use the buildings to your advantage." Okay. There were many things I wanted to say, and several questions I wanted to ask. But right now, there was no time to lose. Turning in another direction, I took off into some dark alleyways. At the same time, I could hear explosions not far from me, but ones that sounded different from the fireballs. They were also more rapid. It was the leader, no doubt. Plex couldn't be having an easy time if even he was hurried. Thankfully it seemed he was also a competent magus, so he had some power. Not so fortunate for me though. Sure, I was a magus, but I had no idea how to use my power. I could only run. The two wizards on my tail gave chase. It seemed like they were fast too, because even with my recovering speed, I couldn't seem to shake them off. I took turn after turn, and no matter where I went, my surroundings were nothing but dark buildings and creepy alleyways. The people were scarce too, and when I came running, they often shrunk to the side, especially when they saw my pursuers. No open areas, no distance. I repeated these things in my mind. I couldn't let these guys have enough time to launch a fireball my way, so I needed to constantly be twisting and turning. At the same time, I retrieved the knife Plex gave me. My stamina was draining and I couldn't keep running forever, especially since these guys seemed like they were in better shape than me. They were gaining, so my mind rapidly started forming ideas. It was the so-called air specialist who was trying to catch me up close. On the contrary, the fireball one kept his distance intentionally. I could only assume that the air specialist had the ability to fight up close. Still, I was running out of energy, so I needed to do something. And I got an idea. I turned a corner, just as I always did. But then I stopped. I turned and looked back to where I knew the air specialist would come. In fact, I even charged back around, my knife in hand and my desperation ready to kill someone. As if before it was only playing around, my adrenaline surged more than it ever has. It was like a drug, making my senses unbearably acute, and forcing my muscles to use every ounce of power they had. But it seemed like the air specialist was cautious. Instead of turning the corner hastily, he came at an angle, arriving with distance between us. Still, I charged. Turning and running away because things didn't go exactly as predicted would only give him the opening he wanted. And my desperation wasn't going to go unsatisfied. My large strides carried my arm to where it needed to go. I threw myself at that robed man with wild abandon. Everything seemed to be in slow motion. And he raised his palm in retaliation. He pushed it toward my chest, but disregarding whatever he was going to do, I pushed forward. And my knife met its target. I stabbed forward, but instead of the knife slicing through the robe, it was actually stopped. However, my surging force behind it couldn't be so easily negated. Although the blade didn't slice through, I could distinctly feel the knife push its fabric-enveloped edge into the man's body. I could feel flesh split, and I could hear the man yell in pain. Fabric might block a slash, but its flexibility still allowed deformation. I was basically stabbing him with a dulled blade, and it had its effects. However, his palm that was slammed against my torso didn't seem to be for nothing. Right after I stabbed, I could feel an odd force surge from his hand with a momentary flash. I could feel the gust of air brush against my body, making my clothes flutter. But that was light. Instead, the force was invisible as it surged through my body. An invisible energy. It felt both weirdly invasive and incredibly painful as it disrupted my insides. It was like a punch to the liver. It made me weak, my stomach contracting and forcing me to vomit. My legs buckled for but a moment as I was thrown to the floor. But as I pulled away, I could see a vague phantom appear beside the air specialist. And then, a knife appeared in his neck. Blood sprayed into the air as his body collapsed, his hands clutching his neck. That phantom moved toward me, grabbing my arm and forcing me up despite every cell in my body protesting. "Don't stop. Not unless you want to burn alive." Plex's voice shook my head before he shoved me into another alleyway. After that, I could hear more explosions along with the enraged shouts of the leader. Riding the high of my adrenaline, I ignored the pain and ran even without breathing. But now, I really was at my limit. I didn't even have 10 seconds to recover, and minutes of that had pushed my body to its short-term limits. So I found the nearest doorway and threw my body against it. Thankfully, luck was on my side as it was thrown open. I stumbled into a dark room decorated with sparse furniture covered in dust. Abandoned, probably, or just really in need of a cleaning. Either way, nobody seemed to be home, so I ran into the back, entering another door to enter a similarly dark and smaller room. It seemed to be a bedroom, fit with a closet and everything. It was the closet I disappeared into. After that, I could hear hurried footsteps scamper across the wooden floor of the living room. It was the Fireball Warlock, and his breath was hurried as he slowly walked through. He was quiet, as was I. I tried as best I could, but I needed to breathe, so my breath wasn't exactly quiet. But I was still inside the closet, all the sounds I was making muffled. And I knew that guy wasn't one to get close. He had kept his distance the entire time. He probably didn't have a nasty trick like the air specialist. So I was given some time. Time to revel in the agony of my bodily pain. My stomach hurt the most, like all my guts were bruised. And they probably were. That invisible energy wave was a nasty attack. I could taste the iron of blood on my tongue. However, I had noticed something else inside me. More specifically, I noticed a change inside my mind. It was like I had gained a new awareness of something. Something supernatural. Within a dark space inside my head, I could see one bright star and 12 faded stars. A single star of the 13 stars was now present, and as if it were the gateway, I could make out other objects within. The patriarch of the Tavera family said I was a summoner. Well, the powers of a summoner were obvious. They summoned things to do battle for them. And my summons. Tap. I could hear the footsteps of the Fireball man make their way into the room I was in. As my breathing was hurried, he probably knew where I was. Sure enough, his steps stopped, and everything was silent. But then, through the gap underneath the door I was behind, I could see a flash. I raised my arms. Boom! A burst of fire crashed into the door, shattering the wood and blowing it down. There was dust and smoke that rose up as the fireball man approached the doorway. He looked inside, his face sure of himself. But then, click. I stood, facing him directly. And my arm was raised, my hand that held the flintlock pistol pointed straight for his face. I smiled through the agony of my body, even as blood spilled from my lips and tongues of fire burned my clothes. I don't think I've ever been so excited as I looked across the barrel of this primitive weapon. Tally-ho, bitch! Bang! The patriarch of the Tavera family looked down at me with a punchable smile. Thankfully they had a healer. It was an older gentleman who was a warlock and trained in the ways of healing, whatever that meant. All I knew was that I felt a lot better after he drugged me with some tasty red pills that melted in my mouth. They were kind of like candies. Plex, on the other hand, was perfectly fine. Figures, since his ability was apparently turning invisible. No wonder he was so good in this line of business. If he were by himself, he could just escape any confrontation. You did good, kid. To think you'd awaken your power right as you were cornered. You know, I think you're just right for this line of business. Isn't that right, patriarch? Indeed. The ability to grow in the face of adversity is the greatest trait one can have. Hee, your wisdom is spot on. What do you think, John? The payout for this job is big, and there will be more in the future. How about you come officially work with me? I was silent as I weakly raised my middle finger. It didn't seem like this insult translated to this world though, as Plex tilted his head. What's that? Something you can shove up your ass. Bahaha. The patriarch suddenly roared in laughter, smacking Plex's back. Plex, you've got a good one here. Take him to the Polaris family after he recovers. He's made it through this trial by fire, so I plan to make true on my promise. Sure thing, patriarch. Plex nodded as the patriarch walked out. The two of us were left alone, me in the medical bed of the Tavera mansion. Plex narrowed his eyes at me. You get 20% of the pay. Deal. 10%, since you easily agreed. What? I jumped, and we argued until I was too tired to negotiate anything better than 17%. After that, I was finally allowed to rest, succumbing to incredible mental exhaustion. I was pretty sure the encounter only lasted an hour or so. After a night's rest at the Tavera mansion, I left the black market and headed back to my small hotel room. Of course, that wasn't without my cut of the pay from the heavyweight job. Just under 20% of the pay gave me about 3,400 coin. It was an enormous amount considering the other small jobs only gave a few hundred coin at most. Of course, this pay was earned at the risk of my life, but if I were Plex with his experience and abilities, I too would be having a heyday with these jobs. Earning huge amounts of money would be child's play. However, after my discovery in the face of death, I was thinking that I really might be able to carve out a spot for myself in this business. While on my bed, still recovering from my internal wounds, I lifted my hand and gazed at my crest. Then, I closed my eyes. In the dark space of my mind, I could see one star lighting the space. Around it were 12 other stars, all of them faded, obviously not yet unlocked. I concentrated on the first lit one, and my vision zoomed into the star. It was like the star was a portal to another dimension, one that contained an assortment of weapons and gear. One of them was the flintlock I had used last night. A primitive weapon, but still devastating against fleshy targets with its large lead bullet. It was only capable of one shot before it had to be reloaded, and thankfully, I only needed one shot to kill that fireball warlock. Otherwise I may as well have kissed my life goodbye. The point was though that I had just found out the use of my crest. I was indeed a summoner, but instead of summoning monsters or creatures to fight for me, I summoned guns. I couldn't think of a more American power than this. Conjuring the power of beautiful steel firearms to deliver hell upon my enemies. Or just to keep myself from getting robbed in the black market. Either way. In the first star, I could see primitive weapons like the flintlock, tomahawk, some knives, etc. And there were 12 more stars ahead, all of them faded, my mind unable to look into their dimensions. But I could guess what would lie ahead. Better weapons, better gear. With each star I would no doubt unlock better weaponry, though I didn't know just how good it would get. As for summoning those weapons, it wasn't as simple as pulling the weapon out of the dimension. In some way, the weapons were still mystical since the flintlock I pulled out was no longer with me. It had disappeared at some point not long after I used it. And now when I looked into the star with a bit of a clearer head than before, I could tell that there was a price on these weapons. A price that was paid with the invisible energy inside me. I was certain that the invisible wave of energy I was hit with last night had triggered something within me since now. I was also aware of a mystical energy inside my body. It was a simple ball of energy, located at the center of the 13 stars. It was small, lacking density like a faint fog. It was also red in color. This red ball of energy was faintly connected to the star. I knew that I could stream its energy into it, and with it, summon one of the weapons. Unfortunately, my energy wasn't great and the prices for these weapons seemed significant. Honestly, I wasn't sure how I had summoned the flintlock pistol. But I knew that there were many things that I didn't know about this magical system, so I decided to wait until I could learn more. Until then, knock knock. Suddenly, I could hear taps on my door. They were gentle, but given the recent events, I still cautiously opened the door with my hand on the knife sheath. And the person I saw was familiar. Chief. Haha, it's good to see you, John. The chief smiled. I was very fond of this man from a rural village. Out of the kindness of his heart, he brought me to this city and set me up. Without him, I don't know what I would have done when I first came here. However, I had thought he left, which was why I was surprised he was here. Also, he shouldn't know where I was living as I had rented a room in a hotel Plex recommended. The chief was all smiles as we clasped hands, but then he checked out my body. Along my face and my exposed arms were several large cuts and bruises that were healing. Goodness, John, what happened? Who hurt you? Nobody important, Chief. The situation was handled rather well if I do say so myself. If you say so. The chief looked worried, but with my confidence, he didn't press the matter. I tilted my head at him. Didn't you leave? It's been a few days. You should be heading back to the village. I was going to, but I wanted to check on you before I left, make sure you were settling nicely. And since I didn't find you at my hotel, I searched around and found your name here. Sorry if I was intrusive. No, it's fine. I'm actually glad I got to see you one more time. Here, come in and let me give you something. I waved him in and walked over to a nearby table, pulling out my large sack of coin. As I sifted through, I asked a question. Hey Chief, how much coin does the normal man make in a month? A month? Well, the men at the town make around 1,000 a month with farming, but for those in the city, maybe 5,000? I couldn't be sure. Oh, I was surprised. To think I got around a month's pay from a single night of work, and that was just a fraction of the entire payout. Being a delivery man paid shockingly well. Not long after, I pulled out a small stack of coin. Here, some money as a thank you for taking care of me. I pushed 1,000 coin toward the chief, and he seemed flustered by the money. 1,000 coin? John, where did you get so much in a few short days? It was an advance for my new job. Take it, for your help. I won't take no for an answer. I slid the coin to him with seriousness that didn't let him deny. It only ended when he reluctantly took the money, giving me a heavy sigh. John, you're a good kid. Just know you can come by my village at any time. Ymir Village. You'll always have a home there. Thanks, Chief. Just make sure you get back safely. I had many questions about my new power of summoning. I wanted to know what that energy was, how I could increase it, how to unlock more stars, and how to properly summon weapons. Thankfully, it seemed like the time to learn these things wasn't far off. Although the patriarch of the Tavera family had promised me, I had no idea who the Polaris family was or what they could give me. It was only when I arrived at the warehouse that Plex explained. Oh yeah, they're a summoner mafia, but not headquartered in the Founders Market. They're located in the second black market called the Black Spider Market. In that place, there are only two mafias that dominate, and one of them is the Polaris family. Plex rubbed his chin while looking across the job board, plucking a few papers. The Polaris family, while primarily filled with summoners, also has divisions of warlocks and knights. They're a powerful family even greater than the Tavera family in regards to the sheer power of their members. The Tavera family has more influence though and handles more money. This difference between them has led to them being allies. What's the difference between the Founders Market and the Black Spider Market? I guess it's the difference between the elites and the commoners. Plex walked over, laying out a few jobs on the table. The Black Spider Market, while handling less monetary volume, also handles the most valuable items. Information, high-class mercenaries, and some of the most exotic items you've ever seen. They're the top dogs of the black market within this kingdom, and you, my friend, have scored an opportunity to meet with them. Specifically, a powerful summoner who's going to give you some advice. This opportunity is a huge one, so huge that I'm shocked you actually got it. Oh, that sounds useful. I brightened at his words. I was just thinking how I needed more information about my power. Now, I was going to meet an expert in the field. Truly a God-sent opportunity. And all it took was almost dying in a fiery hell. Plex shook his head. You're lucky, John. I know I roped you into this dangerous job considering you're new to the city and all, but there are many who would kill to be in your position. Of course, there have been many who've died in your position as well. I think the patriarch knew that, so he's giving you a bit of support. What you gain in your meeting today will likely determine how you fare over the next several months. Because, well, you're kind of locked into this now. It's do or die. Wait, the meeting's today? His ominous words blew right over my head as I selectively asked that question. He nodded. It is. But first. He picked out 2 of the jobs he had in front of him, shoving them in my face. Go make a couple deliveries. Once you get back, we'll leave. Consider yourself initiated, kid. Now you get to deal with a bunch of addicts and unsavory underground dealers. I sighed while taking the papers. From the first day, I had pretty much accepted what I'd gotten into. Of course, if Plex wasn't the way he was, then I would have left quickly. But Plex seemed a good man, someone who had saved my life a few times already. So long as I wasn't a dumbass, it seemed he would lead me to succeed. I didn't mind working in this shady business, especially considering it paid so well. Plus, it had already taught me a lot about this world, and it would continue to teach me more as I got better. I was jumping into the deep end of what this new life had to offer. But hey, I'd rather do this than be a baker at a bread shop or sitting at the front desk of some random store. With those convictions, I made my way out of the warehouse, embarking on my first solo jobs. My 2 deliveries were rather easy. The hardest part was navigation. I had to admit, it was embarrassing looking like a tourist with a map. So much of my time was spent wondering if I was going in the right general direction, only taking out my map a few times. But finally getting to the locations, I was able to pick up the items to be delivered from the dealers. After that, I took them to the recipients. Thankfully the first one didn't show me any hostility. He seemed busy and gave me the money straight, so I simply took it back to the dealer. It was the second recipient though that gave me a hard time. But that's when my acting skills, what little I had, came into play. I mimicked Plex as best I could, keeping a confident and uncaring attitude, as if I wasn't afraid of a fight. Of course, I was, but they didn't need to know that. That combined with a friendly demand and a small brandish of my obviously used knife, and the guy's attitude flipped as he brought me the money. And after taking that to the last dealer, my jobs were done. It took almost 3 hours for just 2 jobs, which honestly wasn't that bad. The 2 jobs combined paid me 400 coin, which while nothing compared to the heavyweight delivery, was still really good pay. After all, monthly salaries on the low end were around 2,000 coin. I was already a fifth of the way there with 3 hours of work. Of course, things were more expensive in the city. I was still living in a hotel, had only 1 pair of normal clothing, and walked around with nothing to my name. Once I actually started buying things, I'm sure the expenses would add up. After all, everything was always more expensive in the cities. I'm sure normal monthly salaries here ranged around 5,000 coin, like what the chief told me. In that case, I had a lot more work to do. But first, I was going to learn about my power from a proper summoner. I was excited as I walked down the streets of the Founders Market. All the sights of risque women and colorful gambling dens were still exciting to me, even though I knew I would get used to it eventually. However, it was when I was approaching the exit that I heard my name. John. My head turned, finding Libitus and another man waving toward me. They were behind a bar with a few drinks in front of them. I walked over. Hey Libitus. John. I heard you took a hard hit during the heavyweight run yesterday. It also looks like you healed nicely. Yeah, thankfully. Whatever the doctor at the mansion gave me was good stuff. Although I'm sore, I don't have any problems working. Good. He nodded. Then, the man next to him smiled. Heh, he really does look like a tourist. Well, right now, I know the black market better than the actual city. So forgive me. What's your name? With a smile, I put my hand out toward the stranger. He looked at me silently for a second before grabbing an unopened glass and slapping it into my hand. Tovex. I heard you're Plex's new protege. Not necessarily by choice, but yes. Heh, since when does anyone here have a choice? He chuckled before taking a swig. Libitus chimed in. You may not have asked for any of this, but it's not a bad line of business. The danger is the worst part. Everything else is easy. I'd actually say you're lucky. You being completely new to the city, a foreigner through and through, is what landed you this job. Why would that get me this job? Because you can never be too sure about someone. The mafias and the clans of the kingdom go to extreme lengths to plant spies and saboteurs in all industries. It's damn near impossible to find someone who has no biases toward any one banner. Neutrality in this place doesn't exist. Except for our business. Libitus sighed, but his words made me confused. You're saying that Plex has no biases? Not even toward the Tavera family who's his client? No, actually. Plex doesn't limit himself. He'll work for enemies if they hand over the money. People like the patriarch of the Tavera family are just those he's friends with. But when it comes to business, there are no loyalties in his eyes. And that's exactly what makes him so famous. That and his abilities. The man has never failed a job. No assassins nor the royal guard can stop him. And I'm supposed to be his protege? I suddenly had great doubts as to my position in all this. It seemed like Plex was a renowned man not just in his field of business, but in the entire kingdom. How was I supposed to be that man's apprentice? More than that, how could he possibly declare me so when I haven't shown any ability to handle what he does? Libitus sighed. Well, don't be shocked, but you're not actually the first. Plex has brought in and tutored around a dozen different kids just like you. Most of them died when he dragged them into the lion's den like he did with you. Luckily you survived. And what about the others who also survived like me? Well, he scratched his cheek. One died during a direct conflict with the Clockwork Institution, and the other got greedy for a delivery and was hunted. That second one ended up becoming a delivery that Plex took, his head being dropped off in a box at the warehouse. And the intended recipient was the kid's mother. So basically, all of them have died. Ouch. I rubbed my temples with a long breath. Tovek suddenly slapped my shoulder. Hey, all you have to do is not do what they did. Don't die, and don't get greedy. Those are basically the only tenets of us delivery men. Those who follow those rules get the money, the fun, and the connections. Those who don't end up with their heads in boxes. So just be smart about things, yeah? I'll do my best. I smirked while twisting off the cap of my bottle, taking a swig. And it was surprisingly good alcohol. I nodded at it before waving to the two. All right, I've got a place to be. The Polaris family, right? Hey, take all you can get from there. If you get lucky, you'll be doing business with them too. Remember, connections are everything. I thought that was common knowledge? I asked with a smile while walking away, leaving the black market. After passing through and grabbing a kebab from Chef Black's restaurant, I made my way back to the warehouse. There, Plex was sprawled out on a chair, snoring while asleep. Seriously? It's not even midnight yet. I walked over, kicking his leg. Hey, huh? We've got places to be. And I was only gone for a few hours. He yawned and spent a few seconds waking up. Then he sniffed, and his eyes turned toward my bottle. I narrowed my eyes, suddenly knocking it all back and downing what was left. Damn you. Hey, this is good stuff. Speaking of, I ran into Libitus and Tovex, and they told me about all your prior apprentices. Oh? He sobered up a bit, leaning back into the seat. It's true. A lot of youngins have gotten killed attempting to survive in this line of work. Why, does that scare you? It doesn't make me happy. To think that if I hadn't discovered how to use my power, I would have died from a fireball. Sure, you saved me once, but you still put me into that position. So I can't say that my trust in your integrity hasn't warped significantly. But, well, I suppose I have my own assurances now. Got one taste of power and decided that you're invincible. I happen to have an apprentice like that. He's dead now. As if that fact were something to be proud of, Plex only smirked at me. And I could understand. I barely knew anything about these crests or the magic of this world. I was hardly a newborn baby in the field, and I was already confident in myself. That would be a bad thing, but only if I were anything but a summoner. Guns happened to be a great equalizer. Unless Plex had some strong magical armor underneath his clothes, or if his magic was as strong as steel, a single bullet from even a flintlock could kill him, let alone the weapons in my other stars. I mean, I killed that fire warlock with a single bullet. And he had far more experience than I did. Guns were great. But that was difficult to explain to Plex, so I didn't press the issue, just shaking my head at him. All I want from you is to not be thrown into certain death. I can be an apprentice or whatever the hell you've roped me into being. I want the money and experience. But don't go thinking you can throw my life away like all the other apprentices you've apparently had. Do that, and I might just take you out with me. Is that a threat? Plex stood from his seat, standing in front of me with a casual gaze of grizzled hostility. But I only tensed up, meeting him head-on. Yeah, that was a threat. So if you leave me to die in a clusterfuck of wizards and fireballs, you better make sure I'm dead by the end of it. Otherwise I'm coming after you with some cold steel in my hand. After a moment of tense silence, Plex smiled and chuckled. Haha, you're a feisty one. Don't worry, John. If I wanted to kill you, I wouldn't be taking you to a place that'll make you stronger. So how about we quit the pissing contest and go take a trip, He smacked my shoulder and started walking out of the warehouse. Relaxing my body, I sighed and left with him, taking to the city streets. The Founders Market was located in the outer regions of the city. This meant that its area wasn't high class despite being wealthy. The Black Spider Market, on the other hand, I didn't think it was in the heart of the city, even more that it would be clearly marked for the public to see. Besides the monolithic Magic Tower and the Royal Palace, there were several other skyscrapers around them, though they weren't as tall. I roughly counted 8 other skyscrapers that could compare in height. And one of those was the Black Spider Hotel. Many might see it and think it a mere luxurious hotel, a place for other diplomats or politicians to stay temporarily. But apparently it was a front for a much deeper reality. Plex led me into the hotel, and it was there that we met the receptionist. He was a man of average height and build, not looking special in any way besides his prim appearance and demeanor. But of course, no assumptions could be made about anybody associated with this place. Ah, Plex. It's good to see you again. Making another delivery? Not quite, Keymaster. I'm actually here for my protege John right here. He pat my shoulder, prompting the Keymaster to nod toward me. John, is it? I wish you luck during your session with the Polaris family. He smiled toward me as Plex put 2 coins on the table. Taking them, the Keymaster waved his hand. An owl was momentarily summoned on his shoulder. That big-eyed bird looked at me before looking down at the coins. Its eyes flashed, and then, the Keymaster placed the coins back on the table. Plex took one, and I took the other. The owl disappeared as I took the coin. Welcome to the Black Spider Hotel. You have been granted entry. Here are the keys. He brought out 2 keys from seemingly nowhere, handing them to us. I felt its weighty significance and copper-like texture that was refined with masterful craftsmanship, giving it intricate yet sleek designs. After that, Plex said his goodbyes, as did I. We left for what seemed like an elevator. In fact, the entire first floor of the hotel was filled with elevators. At least a dozen of them filled the walls, and we quickly chose one before stepping inside. Go ahead and insert your key. Plex said that as he did so. I could see 10 keyholes on one of the walls, so I picked one at random and stuck my key inside. Turn to the right. Click. I listened to him and heard a noise. After that, a screen flashed above the keyholes. It showed 2 buttons. One had the number 3 on it, and the other was blank. Remember this for the future. Plex spoke while pulling out his coin, looking at its surface. Every day, the floor to access the Black Spider Market is different. The correct floor is indicated by your coin, so if you're going for the market, enter the number on the coin. On the other hand, if you're here for the hotel, click the button with the number 3 on it. Okay. I pulled out my coin like he did and saw a number on it. Then I tapped the blank button, causing a dial of numbers to appear around it. I typed in 82 foot. Ding! With my input, the elevator made another noise as it began to move. Good. Just remember, only one person needs the coin, but both people need the key. That means you always go to the Keymaster first. Hence his name. Alright. Oh, and don't mess with the guy either. He may not look it, but he's the emissary for the entire Black Spider Market. Let's just say, if you happen to see him outside of that reception desk, something somewhere is seriously fucked up. Right. I just let out a sharp sigh. Seriously, you couldn't judge anyone by appearance here. It wasn't long before the elevator brought us to our destination. When it opened, I could see a luxurious hallway with a red carpet, chandeliers along the ceiling, and large paintings of what seemed like notable figures, both men and women. There were 2 people standing guard at the end of the hallway, both standing to the side of a set of double doors. They were wearing full plate armor seemingly made of silver, their faces covered by intimidating but intricately designed helmets. We walked up to them, Plex taking out his coin while doing so. I also did, and upon seeing both, they pushed open the doors for us. And then, we were allowed into the Black Spider Market. Oh, I forgot this was today. What a coincidence. Plex let out a happy chuckle as we descended a small set of stairs, walking into a huge plaza. It was full of floating lights and colorful sprites that looked like fairies. There were men and women dancing within this plaza to the melodic beat of an orchestra playing within an open building. Their music, both upbeat yet complex in its musical design, had everyone laughing, smiling, and clacking the heels of their shoes to its rhythm. The atmosphere was intoxicating. I felt like jumping right in, joining all those strangers with passion and freeing enthusiasm. I could also smell the high-class alcohol, rich in flavor yet carrying an aroma of powerful ethanol. Plus, everyone was dressed so nicely, like it was some kind of public ball. They were also wearing masquerade masks that covered the top half of their faces, all of them designed with flamboyant feathers or designs. I felt out of place in that way. Even though I was in a suit, it seemed casual compared to the luxurious dresses and tuxedos of everyone else. I also didn't have a mask. This is Vatsy's gala. It happens at the end of every third month, put on and paid for by one of the richest men in the damn world, Harold Vatsy. I'm surprised the Polaris family is having you come to them today. That or Patriarch Tavera is fucking with us. Seriously? He has a sense of humor, so it wouldn't be the first time. Let's just head over. Maybe whoever is supposed to meet you isn't drunk yet. Plex lead me through the plaza. We passed through wide open streets, most of which were filled with people who were passing through to other buildings nearby. Most buildings here were the highest class. Their entries were exotic, carrying flashing designs not unlike neon lights and statues or art. I saw some food establishments, but the majority of buildings were occupied by some sort of craftsman. There was even a library, which turned out to be one of the biggest buildings within the market. The only building bigger than that was the auction house. Plex explained to me that there was no safer place to be than within the auction house during the monthly auctions. And Vatsy's gala was the party that came after the tri-monthly auction, which was the one that sold the most powerful and exotic items. The gala served as a major resting point, almost like a holiday, allowing everyone to get some much-needed entertainment. Of course, only those who could actually enter the Black Spider Market could participate. So the final day of every quarter year was full of chaos, money, and fun. It wasn't uncommon for hundreds of millions of coin to be passed around in that 24-hour period. After all, the things that were sold during the auction were nothing but the best. A small selection of exotic, world-shattering, or insanely luxurious items that caught the eyes of the elites. Of course, there were also numerous sets of things like gear or mass amounts of items that, while not incredibly rare or unique, were still valuable and hard to find. Many illegal items could be attained this way, and nothing lowly like the drugs passed through the Founders Market. It was a place I definitely wanted to know about, as apparently our delivery service was also responsible for moving some things for that auction. It was kind of amazing, the privileges afforded to us mere delivery men. The Black Spider Market wasn't huge, nothing compared to the Founders Market. After all, it was located in the city center behind the Black Spider Hotel. Besides the library and auction house, there were only a few dozen other buildings, along with the massive plaza currently hosting the gala. So it didn't take long to walk to the headquarters of the Polaris family. It was called the Polaris Gate, the entrance that led into the family's estate. And at first glance, the place seemed like a compact college campus. But it was almost entirely empty. Lights were on, but there wasn't a soul in sight besides the guards at the gate. This was obviously due to the party. I was sure everyone was partaking in their night of unhinged entertainment. We approached the guards. State your business. We hail from the Tavera family on business. I am Plex, and this is John. Ah, I understand. Please follow me. One of the guards seemed to be expecting us as he led the way into the estate. He walked us along beautifully paved roads and magical lights. With nobody around, the atmosphere was full of mysticism and serenity. Eventually we entered a large building. Within its halls were pairs of large double doors, each of them adorned with unique designs that seemed to represent the demeanor of their owners. The one we stopped at was a pair of doors that seemed luxuriantly decorated, yet weathered by time. It was a deep navy blue with inlaid gems that glistened like stars, but it clearly hadn't been taken care of for a while. Knock knock. The guard knocked. Esteemed Summoner Anderson, John has arrived. Just send him in already. There was an exasperated shout from within the room, yet muffled by the doors. The guard turned to me. "The esteemed sir is named Maxwell Alberain, and he has quite the temperament. Do be sure to muster your patience, because he has no qualms with kicking you from the estate if he gets angry. He is still one of our most esteemed teachers, however, so take full advantage of this opportunity." "Right. Thanks." I gave the guard a nod as he pushed open the door. Plex smacked my shoulder as he turned. "Have fun. I hummed while going inside, scanning the room as I did so. At first glance, it seemed like a magical lab. My nose was hit with the thick aroma of what I could only describe as herbal must. But at the same time, there was a fresh hint of alcohol. All around the room were desks, bookshelves, and various pieces of lab equipment like glass flasks, exotic plants, and animal parts stored in containers. The most eye-catching thing in the room though floated below the ceiling in the center of the room. It was a huge blue crystal dodecahedron that slowly rotated while shining soft light on the lab. Just the sight of that magical geometric figure spurred something within me. Other than that, the second thing I focused on was the man who slumped down in a chair, a large bottle in his hands that was still completely filled. It was still capped as he held it in his hands. His visage was gray, and he seemed to be brooding over something. Unlike everyone else, he didn't seem to be enjoying this holiday evening. He had a short beard and brushed back hair that was unkempt. He also wore navy blue robes above a nice suit. At the same time, his eyes were deep as they reflected the sight of the unopened bottle. For a while I stood by the door, unsure of what to do. It didn't seem like this man was in any mood to teach me anything. He just continued to stare at the bottle. Perhaps 5 minutes passed like that. Eventually, he closed his eyes and placed the bottle in a drawer of his desk. After slouching back once more while pinching the bridge of his nose, he muttered, "What do you know?" "Absolutely nothing." I didn't sugarcoat things as I answered directly. It seemed to catch him off guard, since he glanced at me with slight incredulity. His eyes looked me over with criticism. "You come straight off the farm or something? No? Then straighten your damn back." Oh. Realizing that I was slouched a bit from waiting around for so long, my abdomen tightened and my torso straightened. But even then, he didn't take his scrutinizing eyes off of me. He stared at me for several moments before opening his mouth. "What's your name?" "John Cooper." I gave my name, but I was also confused as to why he didn't already know it. Then again, neither of us had more than 1 day's notice about this. "Where do you come from?" I hesitated. After all, I didn't exactly know about any places of significance beyond this city, and I wasn't about to speak about something as outlandish as coming from another world. So I gave the name of the only place I knew the name of. A place called Ymer Village. "So you did come straight off the farm?" "Well, yes and no." I remained vague as he pried further. "How old are you?" 22 years old. "You were sent to me at the request of Patriarch Tavera. What is your affiliation with him?" "I'm a delivery man, and I helped him with a single job. It almost cost me my life, but since I came back, he said I would get some tutelage." "I see." He let out a small sigh before scratching his head. "You're a summoner? Have you gone through an activation ceremony?" "What's that?" "You really do know nothing. An activation ceremony is the first step all with crests take to properly initiate their powers. Some say that it's a process of enlightenment or a way to wake up your soul, but really, it's nothing more than infusing your crests with power in order to make your mind aware of it." "Oh. No, I haven't been through the ceremony." "Figures. But I have become aware of my crest. I've even used its power." His eyes sparked with the slightest hint of interest. "Tell me the details." "Basically, I was hit with a wave of invisible energy by a warlock, and afterward, I could see the 13 stars of my crest within my mind. I was even able to summon something, but it disappeared not long after I used it." "Energy? You mean mana? You're telling me that being hit with a low-level mana wave actually activated your authority?" "I suppose." Through inference I could tell that the wave of invisible energy I was hit with was called a mana wave. I asked about what I didn't understand though. "What's authority?" "An authority is what we call the levels of power one can achieve through crests. To be able to summon something means you have activated your first authority. And to think it happened by being hit with a mana wave." "I see. What about mana? What is it?" "The invisible energy ever present throughout the world that allows one to call upon nature's elements. However, only warlocks can utilize mana. Summoners use what's called psyche, the extra-dimensional power of the mind. Knights use vigor, the profound power of the body." "Oh. It seemed the three different types of magi also had three different types of energy. In that case, they were very clearly divided by more than just their powers. So basically, I had awakened my first authority, or my first star, allowing me to summon items from another dimension using Psyche. That was where my knowledge stopped. It seemed Maxwell had also summarized the shallow depths of my knowledge, as he went quiet once more. And I suppose I wished he stayed that way. The next words to come out of his mouth were nothing but irritating. You're ignorant. I guess? An idiot who knows nothing. Not even common knowledge seems to have a place within that thick skull of yours. It's like you've spent your life intentionally being a dumbass, taking zero impressions from anybody who has ever spoken of magi within your presence. My gaze turned deadpan as he continued to insult me for something that wasn't my fault. While I understood his words from the standpoint of a native, I was still ticked off. Just as I was about to retort though, he stood from his seat, disappearing amidst a few of his bookshelves. After listening to the shuffling of paper and a few dropped books, he came back with 6 books with papers sticking out of them. There are 2 things you must learn as a summoner. First is what we call accumulation. I won't teach you any of that right now since you don't need it yet. So I will teach you the second thing. Since you are someone with absolutely no impression of summoning in the slightest, having come from some backwater village and having yet to even get your citizenship, I will teach you this. Thud. He dropped the books on his desk. Now, while I was still irked by all his prior insults, I was beginning to understand that he would at least give me some valuable knowledge. Accumulation is standard. There is very little deviation from the normal formula, and the magisterium holds a legal monopoly on the distribution of the technique. But summoner calls, like warlock magic and knight martial arts, are diverse and plentiful. The Polaris family has their own sets of martial arts, magic, and calls. However, what I will be teaching you deviates from the standard. Picking up the topmost book of the pile, Maxwell flipped it open, his eyes scanning across the pages with a look of melancholy. Summoning is looked down upon, scorned as weak, the calls likened to nothing but a cane for the frail. And there have been some who have proven the world wrong, but they have been outshined by the multitude of warlocks and knights who have so frequently attained vast power. And summoners are not innocent, failing to better themselves like the warlocks and knights, failing to rise through adversity like they have, failing to innovate as they did over millennia. Which is why I have devoted my life to this work. A call to join the League of Disaster Magic and Apex Martial Arts. A call that makes bond limits obsolete. A call to bring down even the most powerful beings. It is the call of the fallen angel. Maxwell spoke of his ambition and his life's work with great emotion. I could tell that he was deeply attached to this technique. Or, I should say call. Like a warlock's magic spell or knight's martial art, summoners had calls. The call of the fallen angel was something Maxwell himself had created. It wasn't a call that had been tested by time or used by anyone else. It also made me skeptical. I didn't know anything about calls, nor Maxwell who had created this. With my naivety, I couldn't verify its quality. Then again, within the Polaris family, he was an esteemed sir. I could at least understand that he wasn't blowing smoke up my ass and knew a thing or two as a summoner himself. In that case, I could trust his expertise. Especially since I knew nothing as it was. I was in dire need of something that would allow me to use my power. This also meant that, perhaps, he wasn't solely insulting me when he said I was ignorant, stupid, and a dumbass. Maybe that was necessary for me to be successful with this call, being a blank slate with no biases. Not that it made me less irritated. You have no use for common knowledge, not yet anyway. Since you have come to me as an empty vessel, I will fill you with the foundational knowledge of this call. You will learn things as necessary for you to use this call the way it was created. Alright. But how good is this call anyway? I'd at least like to know how it compares to something standard, like a call from the magisterium. Standard? Please. He scoffed, as if I'd degraded his name. I was a summoner with 11 authorities, just shy of the pinnacle of this world. And I was a revolutionary in my field. If not for... No, you don't need to know about that. Just know that this call is something that will carry you to the top, so long as you have the talent and dedication. It is not something that anything of the magisterium could possibly compare with. Then why aren't you and this call much more famous than you are? As I said, you don't need to know about that. Should you rise to a respectable level, perhaps you will come to find out yourself. And by then, the knowledge wouldn't affect your development. Now, take this book and begin reading. I will speak as you follow through with the text. He handed the book to me with care, prompting me to take it with a bit of curiosity. I couldn't lose anything by learning this, so I may as well get everything I could from Maxwell's tutelage. Especially if he was offering it for free. Oh, before we begin. Suddenly, Maxwell eyed me with a weird glint in his eye. It was shrewd, causing me to narrow my own. I will accept 3,000 coin a week for teaching services. Deal. Actually, after further consideration, I'm thinking 5,000 will suffice. What? Dropping all pretenses, I entered a heated negotiation with Maxwell. Only when we settled on 3,800 coin per week did I finally let out a relieved sigh. In all honesty, 3,800 coin a week was a massive amount of money for me. I had barely started working, and each job might only give a couple hundred coin. On top of food, housing, and all the money I would need to buy myself other necessities, I might not be able to pay it. At least, that was in the short term. If I were frugal for a while and managed to get past the next month or so, then I would be fine. Still, it seemed like I wouldn't be getting a new pair of clothes anytime soon. Thankfully, Maxwell was at least accommodating with everything else. It didn't seem like he had much of a schedule, so we agreed to meet in the mornings after the founders' market went dark and I was done with work. With that, he began his first lesson. Summoning wasn't as straightforward as warlock magic or night martial arts. Summoning involved contacting spirits from another dimension that summoners accessed through their minds. And yes, it seemed like even the weapons and gear I could summon, like guns and tomahawks, were spirits. How that worked, I wasn't sure. But Maxwell made sure that I thought of even inanimate objects as living beings with their own intelligence. I just went with it. After all, that was probably the least weird part about this whole thing. With that, he moved on to other more detailed teachings. First, he taught me that there were two types of summoning, communing and marriage. Communing was where one called upon the spirits for a temporary amount of time. This was what I did with the flintlock pistol. With Maxwell's Call of the Fallen Angel though, I could create a communion with a spirit and in real time, power it with my psyche. So long as the communion was active, I could wield the spirit, and it would return to the dimension when the communion was cut. This method of active communion was apparently unique to his call, though he didn't tell me what the standard method was. Then there was marriage. And not unlike what it was commonly known as, marriage involved creating a life's bond with a spirit. A marriage, he said, was to be treated as if I were to be married to a woman. The commitment would be lifelong, and not only that, but the spirit's life would be tied to mine. Should I die, the spirit would die with me. This made it far deeper than a standard communion, and was apparently where the specialty of the Call of the Fallen Angel lay. With this system of marriage, I could create bonds with, technically, as many spirits as I wanted. This special bond also afforded both the summoner and the spirit the ability to share their powers in more dynamic ways. In this way, the spirits wouldn't merely be tools to be used, but an ally to cooperate with. However, the cost to marry a spirit was high, and not something to be treated lightly. To marry a spirit was to permanently remove it from the other dimension, attaching it to your mind and soul. If, while in battle, the spirit were killed, it would do great damage to your soul, no different from gouging out a chunk of it. Thus, marriage involved risk for both the summoner and the spirit. It was only to be done if the summoner truly had a deep bond with the spirit and could reasonably accept and guard against the risks. This meant that the number of marriages should be few. These concepts were easy to understand. However, the process to carry out these processes wasn't so. To properly commune with a spirit required a complex process called charming. This was basically spellcasting but for summoners. But charming just any spirit wasn't wise. For one, not all spirits were neutral or benevolent. Some were malicious, and communing with a malicious spirit could end badly should it revolt against you when you needed it to cooperate. So to sift through all the spirits of the dimension, Maxwell taught perhaps the most important and foundational piece of knowledge all summoners should know. It was called projection, something that was universal among all sorcerers. Of course, Maxwell's call had a unique way of projecting into the dimension of your authority. First, there was unassisted projection, which involved a superficial scan of the dimension with your mind. This could reveal details about some unelusive spirits. On the other hand, there was catalyst projection, whereby the summoner turned a married spirit into a catalyst to allow a deep search into the dimension. This afforded them far greater abilities and details, allowing them to glimpse into the nature of the spirits they discovered. It was at this point that Maxwell stopped feeding me information. With the basics down, I understood that the first step I needed to take was projecting into the dimension of my first authority, or my first star. That way, I could properly and systematically discover spirits, charm them, and then commune with them. Of course, learning those things would come later. With the massive influx of information and the fact that I had yet to pay anything for this teaching, Maxwell sent me away. Agreeing to come back the next morning and bring a 500 coin deposit, I left the Black Spider Market. I was in a small daze as I left through the Polaris Gate. Everything that I had learned, while merely conceptual and superficial, opened up a whole new world. Getting hit by fireballs was one way to make me realize that this was truly a magical world. But actually learning about this magic and taking the first steps toward utilizing it was another thing entirely. Besides, just lecturing me on all that conceptual information had taken hours. While informative, Maxwell seemed to enjoy going on tangents. This naturally extended the duration of his lecture, and by now, the sun had already risen. Walking into the major plaza of the market, I could see the aftermath of the tri-monthly holiday. A few bodies were strewn across some tables, including 2 draped across the roof of a nearby building. Some maids and butlers were attending to these unconscious partygoers, hauling them off into the Black Spider Hotel. That was also where I was headed. Making my way to the front desk, I met the key master who was sitting back and reading a book. "Hello, key master." "Ah, John. How was your time with the Polaris family?" "It went well enough, I'd say. My only issue now is how I'm going to pay the extortive fees Maxwell wants for his teaching. I mean, I've been in this city for all of a week and I'm still living in a hotel. I barely have a change of clothes too." "I see. Maxwell can be shrewd, but his knowledge is worth any cost you may incur. I may be able to assist you, however. Your coin, please." "Oh, here." Digging in my pocket, I retrieved the coin I was given upon entry. I also handed back the key. Taking both, the key master's owl appeared on his shoulder once more. It looked at me, then the coin. After the coin glowed, the man flicked it with his thumb, prompting me to catch it. He also tucked the key into his coat, retrieving another. Unlike the previous copper one, this one was silver. "Your coin and key have been updated. Your new room has been allocated on the 12th floor. Since a little bird has told me that you plan on entering the magisterium, I have reserved the room for the time until then. I hope that eases some of your financial burden while you settle." "Really? You're giving me a room for free?" "Naturally. Otherwise it wouldn't help you much, now would it?" He smiled at me, making me scratch my head with a bit of embarrassment. "Right. Thank you, key master. I can only hope to pay this back in the future. It's of no consequence. Please, enjoy your stay at the Black Spider Hotel." He gave a charming bow, which I returned in kind. After that, I left to my former hotel room. It was there that I grabbed what little items I had, cancelled my reservation, and took everything back to the Black Spider Hotel. In the elevator, I made my way to the 12th floor. It let me out in a hallway, which I walked down to eventually find a room marked with the number 22. My key was engraved with the same number, so I inserted it into the lock, turning it and hearing a click. The door swung open, revealing a room that was far more luxurious and spacious compared to the other hotel. It was like comparing a by-the-hour motel and a 5-star room. This new room of mine was equipped with a full kitchen, a large bedroom with a window that overlooked the city, a full bathroom, and a comfortable living room. It had everything I could ask for plus some, and all of it was free. I was quite shocked that the key master would give me something like this, let alone help me in any way. It wasn't like my living fees were that expensive, so I could have dealt with it. Still, this new home would give me great peace of mind. One less thing to worry about and a source of great comfort. For some time, I stared out the window of my room, seeing the sunrise gradually overtake twilight. It was shockingly beautiful as the rays of light filtered between buildings, reflecting off glass and the intricate construction of places like the Royal Palace. Combined with the successive events of the day, I was left in a daze. This really was a different life. And now, I was finally beginning to find my place in this foreign world. Although it was a bit jarring at first, I was able to acclimate to sleeping during the day. And when the sun began to fall, I emerged from my room. With a new bill to pay, I couldn't slack with my work. Heading to the warehouse, I met Plex and recounted what happened. He seemed happy for me, and since I told him that I needed jobs, he didn't bother me much. Heading to the job board, I plucked a few papers and read their contents. This delivery service of ours was both simple and difficult. It involved not just ferrying valuable items, but surviving any encounters with unsavory individuals. I had quickly learned that, even with our principles of mercy, I couldn't give any room to those who may want to cheat me. It was with this mindset that I tackled my jobs. From delivering illegal contraband to ferrying messages, the jobs I took were varied. None of the items we moved were normal. All of it could get you arrested should it be found outside the black market. Thankfully, I didn't have too difficult of a time. While some clients got aggressive, it was nothing I couldn't quell with a brandish of the knife. The most I had to do was land a square punch on a guy's mouth when he spit in my face after asking for payment. Another thing I kept track of was the time it took to complete a job. Some jobs required me to deliver items that were already stored in the warehouse, saving me a trip. But others required me to go between two clients to grab a package, deliver it, collect payment, and return to the source. With my knowledge of the market's layout, I wasn't the most efficient. But despite that and conflicts with clients, I was able to complete a job at an average time of an hour and a half. That meant I could complete 6 jobs if I worked nonstop for 9 hours. With some downtime in between, 6 jobs would make a 10-hour workday. Then there was the average pay. Some jobs were generous and had commission fees of around 400 coin. Those were usually a bit riskier, since you were either hauling obvious cargo or a small but valuable item. It would invite trouble from others besides the clients. Then there was the standard. The majority of jobs paid between 150 and 250 coin. After a full workday of 6 jobs, I came out with about 1,200 coin. That was an average of 200 coin per job. Doing some simple math, that equated to 120 coin an hour. And my weekly bill of 3,800 coin divided by 120 came out to about 32 hours of work just to pay for my education. In all honesty, 32 hours of work wasn't bad. I could have my bill paid off in just a few days. Anything after that would go toward buying myself things like food and clothes. With that knowledge, I decided that 5 jobs per day, 6 days a week, was reasonable. 6,000 coin a week. That's pretty nice. What is? Libitus questioned from beside me. After a hard day's work, I ran into him at the bar we previously met at. That bar was apparently the spot for the delivery men of Plex's company to hang out. I explained to him all the numbers I had run in regards to my income and weekly bill. And for the most part, my plan seemed sound. But then, I suddenly remembered something that might make everything much more difficult. Crap! I forgot about taxes. Hey, how bad are the taxes here? I swear if I lose any more than a quarter of my paycheck, I'm gonna burn this city to the ground. Well, the taxes are about a quarter. At most a third depending on how much you make. But yet again, that's one of the perks of working in the black market. The ability to entirely disregard taxes. No shit? He. I chuckled. In the long list of things I hated, taxes were definitely up there. To think I could just blatantly disregard them. I was beginning to love this job more and more. Oh, one more thing. I remembered something else. I still have to get my citizenship. You wouldn't happen to know anything or anyone that could help me with that, would you? As a matter of fact I do. Libitus took a sip of his liquor. The black market has everything, John. There's a guy here that handles that stuff. He pays off a customs agent, and all the applications he puts forward get accepted quickly. It basically bypasses all the bullshit you would have to deal with on the official route. Of course, you'll have to pay a high price, but it's worth it considering the money you're beginning to make. Right. So where can I find this guy? On Hellard Road. The place doesn't have a name, but it's known by its building number 333. Go there and ask for help getting a citizenship. That simple? Yup. The guy gets a lot of business, so it's become a proper business. I see. Thanks. I'll have to do that tomorrow. Right now, I need to get to class. With that valuable piece of information, I bid Libitus goodbye, heading to the Black Spider Market. My second day of learning involved the more complex details of the call. Specifically, I needed to learn how to project into the dimension and search for spirits properly, even though I could already see plenty as I was. Turns out, these dimensions went deep. What I could see was only what existed on the surface. Within each dimension, there were both weak and powerful spirits. It was the powerful ones that lurked in the dark, waiting to be discovered. Naturally, I wanted to commune with or even marry the most powerful ones. Taking several hours to do so, Maxwell taught me what was basically a spell. By weaving Psyche in a certain pattern, I could form a drone and dive deep into the dimension. This would allow me to project. But weaving my Psyche at all was difficult. Just calling on that invisible power in my mind was enough to frustrate me. It was like moving a new limb. It didn't listen to my commands, let alone move into a complex formation. Luckily, Maxwell had an exercise for that, one that stressed the manipulation of my power. Of course, the exercise also made me tired. It drained my mental energy, making me feel like I had worked for a full 24 hours after merely 2. It was a good thing that these classes were at the end of my day. When it was over and I left with mental exhaustion, I headed to my fancy room in the Black Spider Hotel and knocked out. Contrary to the exhaustion though, my night of sleep was rejuvenating. When I woke up, my mind felt amazingly clear and energetic. Even moving around my psycho was easier, showing clear progress. And so, I went on with my day, my mood high and my steps light. Taking several jobs from the warehouse at the start of twilight, I headed into the Founders Market and made my way around. My deliveries consisted of 2 small boxes of hard drugs, a bag of jewels, a glass vial of a liquid I didn't ask about, and some lingerie for a nearby brothel. That last one was fun since I got a few kisses from the ladies there. Which was good, since my mood had been ruined earlier when someone tried to rob me of the jewels. I was able to fend them off with my knife and no small amount of blows, but I took about as much as I dished. My body was bruised and beaten, leaving me to finish my jobs in irritating pain. Well, nothing a hot lady from the brothel couldn't fix. After leaving the erotic place, I made one last stop. Hellard Road, building number 333. This is it. Finding the unnamed building I was looking for, I pushed open the carved wooden door. It led into a small entry room with a front desk, behind which was a mature yet sharp woman. She eyed me curiously as I walked up. "Hi, I heard that this place could help me with getting a citizenship." "It can. Our standard fee is 1,500 coin. You must pay up front and there are no refunds." Ouch. I sighed in resignation, taking out 1,500 coin. Although I had the money, I would have to work a bit of overtime to make up for it and still make Maxwell's bill. Over time, I had discovered the different denominations for coin. Coin was a blanket term, like dollars. And there were different types of coin. This world used silver and gold as its currency, only, the 2 metals didn't seem to have quite the rarity as on Earth. Silver coins were less valuable, and there were 2 types, the standard silver coin and the silver bullion. The silver coin was worth 1 coin, and the silver bullion was worth 10 coin. Then, the gold coin was worth 100 coin while the gold bullion was worth 1,000 coin. I often got paid in gold coin and silver bullion, and only has Plex ever given me gold bullion, so I only had a few on me. I paid the clerk 1 such gold bullion and 5 gold coins, making for 1,500 coin. She took them indifferently and handed me an application. "Fill out all these fields, and we will take care of the rest. The application will be submitted today and will be verified in 5 days. That is when you can come back and receive your official citizenship." "Thank you. Just out of curiosity, how long does it usually take?" "On average, 7 months. "Oh." She smirked while I sighed in amazement. Seems bureaucracy was a sloth in all worlds. Taking the application, I went and quickly filled everything out. It only asked for basic information, like my full name and date of birth. I didn't have to input anything like physical descriptions or the name of my parents. I did have to put down 2 important things though. Upon handing back my application, the clerk stamped my fingerprint and used a device to record my crest. Apparently it was highly illegal to hide someone's status as a magus, so if you had a crest, it absolutely had to be recorded. I didn't mind, anyway. It wasn't like someone could use that against me, and soon enough I would be entering the magisterium. It couldn't be hidden. With those things, I was finally done. It took no more than 5 minutes, and I would have my citizenship within the week. The black market sure was nice. Sending the application marked the end of my workday, after which I headed to the Black Spider Market and had another lesson with Maxwell. I continued exercising my psyche while trying to weave it into the projection spell I was given. At the same time, since I was a total newbie, I was taught general knowledge about knights and warlocks. Apparently, although they were all considered magi, each of the branches had completely different systems of magic. Warlocks were the spitting image of wizards. They had different spells that they could launch from their body, making them very versatile both in terms of combat and utility. This was also why they were considered the best of the 3 branches. Knights were, as their name implied. They were a magical branch of bodily martial warriors. Through cultivating what they called vigor, a knight could become stronger, faster, gain endless stamina, and pull off martial arts that resembled the powers of mythic gods. They were the second best. And then, at the bottom of the barrel lied the summoners. Considered the worst of all magi, they used Psyche to call upon other dimensional spirits to fight for them. They couldn't make themselves stronger, and they couldn't cast any amazing spells. Their powers were entirely reliant on the spirits they summoned. That wasn't to say that summoners weren't strong. It was just that they had hard times fighting warlocks or knights at an equal level across all levels. They just seemed to be a step below everyone else. Maxwell knew that I would be entering the magisterium, and so he told me to prepare to face that kind of discrimination. But at the same time, he apparently abhorred the thought of allowing me to appear weak. He said that he would prepare me in the time I had before entering so as to not disgrace the summoner name, and more importantly, his call of the fallen angel. It was why he worked me to the bone, having me exercise my ability to manipulate Psyche and stuff my brain full of information. At least I was getting my money's worth. After the first week of being in this new city, my schedule seemed to settle into place. My work became regular as I took several jobs a day. Occasionally I even got my hands on some of the higher-paying jobs. These weren't heavyweights, but since I was a newbie, these middleweight jobs most often got handed to the veterans. But work was constant, and knowing I had bills to pay, the others were generous. Once or twice a week I would get a job that paid a few thousand coin, giving me plenty of surplus and allowing me to spend a bit more. With the unceasing flow of cold hard cash, I got myself all the necessities I didn't have. Multiple pairs of clothing, a few accessories like pocket watches and hats, all the various items I needed to keep myself clean every day. All my needs were satisfied within a few weeks of working. I even paid back my small debt to Plex, making sure we were even. All my earnings that went above my weekly bills would become either savings or go toward buying me some luxuries. Other than that, after a few weeks, I was finally able to learn projection from Maxwell. On top of that, Plex began to receive jobs for the upcoming monthly auction. After about 3 weeks of exercising my control over Psyche and trying to weave it, I was finally able to perform the projection spell. I was with Maxwell during the accomplishment. Use the newly formed drone to scout the dimension. Once you discover a spirit, it can't be forgotten or lost, so use your energy as efficiently as possible to seek out as many spirits as you can. I was silent as he spoke, focusing on the visions in my mind. As soon as the spell had been woven, I could feel as if my eyes were planted in that drone of Psyche. I could control it, and I used it to fly through the dimension of my first star. I discovered some spirits immediately. Some were identical to my flintlock, and others were items like rapiers. But most importantly, I found ammo. Tons of ammo. Lead bullets and black powder packets littered the entire dimension. These would allow me to reload whatever flintlock guns I used. But perhaps even more than that, I was able to expose certain details about the spirits I saw. I could clearly see just how much Psyche was required to establish a connection to them. Most were well within my limits. But there were some that were expensive. They were the powerful ones that Maxwell talked about, which got me curious. Along with projection, Maxwell had taught me all about communion that was required to utilize the spirits. So with my drone as the medium, I reached out to one of them. It was a flintlock pistol, but instead of a standard one, this one had a much larger and thicker barrel along with engravings on the wood body. It was unique, and when I made the handshake and initiated communion, I figured out why. The communion seemed to trigger an influx of memories from another time. In my mind, I could see a large man dressed in an old militia uniform. He rode on a horse and carried a rapier. On his hip was the flintlock pistol I saw. I quickly understood what time period these scenes came from. The Revolutionary War. A time when America fought for its independence from Britain. A time when firearm technology was in its infancy, yet becoming more important than ever. I saw as this loosely uniformed man rode alongside some soldiers of the Continental Army, all of them defending a village from invading redcoats. The two sides quickly entered a heated battle, the man on the horse swinging his rapier while making his way around the village. It was only after a while that his horse took a shot to the chest, unable to maintain itself and falling to the ground. The man jumped off and resumed battle on the ground. When on the ground, he resorted to using his unique pistol. When he fired, the pistol exploded with roaring flames. The heavy bullet was backed by an abnormally large amount of gunpowder, so much so that he actually managed to kill 2 men with a single shot after the bullet blasted through their bodies. And his skill with reloading was impeccable, even under pressure. He could pour powder and slam down another round while running before quickly lining back up another shot. The battle at the village lasted 4 hours, but this was not a heroic tale of victory. Instead, the Continental Army fought until they fell to the tactics of the British Army. The man with the unique pistol was one of the last to fall. In the end, he had taken 34 people with him, his pistol, aim, and reloading skill carrying him until the end. With that, the memory stopped. In the real world, I could feel a large and heavy object appear in my hands. I saw the pistol in its full glory, with even a few dried blood stains in the wood. It was heavy, cold, and loaded. And with its appearance, I could instinctively understand how to use it. My arms and hands aimed the pistol just as the man in the memories had. I could feel my body reflexively wield it. I had inherited his skills, the skills infused into the spirit of the gun. Amazing. What is that? Maxwell asked as he observed the pistol in my hand. As I had learned, summoners could conjure spirits from two different categories, hot and cold. Hot summons were living spirits like exotic monsters and animals. These were conventionally living beings, and they had intelligence that increased with every level. And cold summons were conventional weapons, like swords, spears, and shields. These were inanimate beings. My category was of the second type, and quite unfortunately, cold summons were regarded as the worst type of summons. So not only was I a lowly summoner, but I had cold summons. Thankfully, I knew that these cold weapons were anything but lowly or lacking in power. I gave Maxwell a vague explanation. This is a gun. It fires deadly projectiles, like arrows. I see. This is not a weapon that I recognize, though it looks similar to siege cannons. It's almost exactly like that, except dialed down. Anyway, I've successfully communed with this spirit. Yes, congratulations. Maxwell gave his praise while scrutinizing the pistol. It seems like a decently powerful spirit for your level. One thing though. I was able to see the memories of this spirit. Is that normal? Memories? Maxwell rubbed his chin. Spirits, regardless of animation, do indeed have what we can consider minds. It has been documented, though rarely, that some cold summons carry with them remnant spirits, most often of warriors from another time or world. This gives special cold summoners some ability as they can inherit the skills of the previous warrior. Really? Then why are they still considered the weakest? Because you are inheriting the skill of a warrior, yet not his physique, endurance, strength, or power. You are a glass sword, sharp yet brittle. So even if you inherit the skill of the greatest warrior from another world, you couldn't hold a candle to even mid-level knights since you lack what truly comprises a powerful warrior, which is the powerful body. I guess that makes sense. I could understand what he was saying, though it didn't make me feel good. This meant that, while I could attain powerful guns, they may not be able to carry me far. But Maxwell only smirked. Don't let it get to your head now. That logic only applies to normal summoners. With my call of the fallen angel, you will be capable of so much more, disposing of preconceived limiters. You're lucky I even told you about normal summoners. Because if you let the biases of normality taint your mind and teachings, then you won't be able to use my call to its fullest extent. So forget about it. Oh, all right. His words picked my spirits back up. It seemed there was still more in store regarding this call. So I disregarded what he said earlier. It wasn't much longer afterward that we ended the session. I left for my room with both slight exhaustion and a sense of accomplishment. Now, I could properly project and commune with spirits, but perhaps unfortunately, the time to use them was nigh. It was the next day that Plex called in the few members of his company. This was also when I discovered that there were more than 3 of us. There were 5 of us. Myself, Plex, Libitus, and 2 others. One was Tovex, who I had briefly met alongside Libitus at a bar. The other was a woman who I knew nothing about. You know Tovex, and this is Rayla. Libitus named the woman I didn't recognize. After observing her, I could faintly sense a significant amount of power lurking within her body. I knew immediately that she was a magus, though I didn't know what type. All I knew was that I would get my ass handed to me if I fought her. The introductions were short as I greeted the 2 of them. Afterward, Plex began a meeting. Not that it seemed important. Everyone was casual. The monthly auction is here, so I have jobs as always. We'll be moving things mainly from the Tavera family and the Polaris branch in the Founders Market. But we also have a special order, which is the reason I've called you all here. Plex smiled while taking out a paper and showing us its front. It had a large symbol on it, that of a skull with blood vessels hanging from its bottom and eye sockets that had chains drooping from them like tears. The Trenches have requested our help. Who are they? I didn't recognize the name Trenches, though they seem to be a mafia of the Founders Market. Plex smoothly answered my question. There are 4 dominating powers of the Founders Market, the Tavera family, the Clockwork Association, a branch of the Polaris family, and the trenches. The trenches, though, unlike the others, hold a small amount of territory and basically no organized influence. They're a gang, nothing more than a bunch of bloodlusting freaks who rule a portion of the market through fear and sheer power. Normally they stay in the dark, making their money mainly through the production of hard drugs. But occasionally they'll step out into the light, as they are now. Plex waved the paper. This job from them is rather sudden, which means they're doing something significant. We can expect to see some good stuff at the auction, but first, we need to move whatever cargo they have for us. Naturally, this involves plenty of danger, more so than usual. Simply stepping into their territory is sketchy, so 4 of us are going. Who? I'd like to go. I'm curious too. A few spoke their opinions, yet Plex seemed to already know his decision. I'll be taking John, Rayla, and Libidus. Tovex, you stay back on the outskirts of the territory. We may need your support when making our way out. Alright. When do we start? Right now. Plex wasted no time, gathering whatever he needed. The auction is in 2 days, but I want to move whatever bomb the trenches want us to handle as soon as possible. That means we leave in 10. With that, the 4 of us prepared to leave. It wasn't much later that we were on the street. For a while things were normal, nothing I hadn't seen several times before. But then, we stepped across what seemed to be the point of entry. Everything suddenly got dark as we left the rest of the market behind. What lay in front of us were ragged stone roads and beat-up buildings. They seemed to be more like shacks as the bristling stench of drugs and chemicals entered my nose. These run-down shacks were ever surrounded and inhabited by nothing but thugs. Not a single person I saw seemed to have any semblance of rationality hiding behind those eyes. It got really bad when I saw an orgy in the streets. If the people were at least good-looking I could bear it, but the sight of those humans who had their bodies degraded by drugs was unbearable. I put my hand on Libidus' shoulder and closed my eyes, bearing through the stench and letting him lead the way. Oh Lord, cleanse my tainted eyeballs of the horrid sight. Yeah, that was pretty bad. Couldn't even get to the whorehouse first. Rayla agreed with me as we continued deeper into the territory. Thankfully it really was small as we quickly came upon the headquarters. It was there that we were greeted by guards, all of them carrying various creative weapons such as clubs with teeth sticking out of the wood or jagged cleavers. Still, I could tell that all of them were strong despite the rough appearances. Well, if it isn't Plex. I had a feeling you wouldn't waste time. A voice sounded at our arrival, one that was masculine yet carried a hint of shrill madness. A man who was leaning on a tilted and shattered pillar stood. My eyes were immediately pulled toward him, but not because of his appearance. Instead, it was like I could see him in my mind. His body carried with it bristling power, radiating an aura of unhinged psychosis. My hair stood on end as my chest constricted in fear. My breathing turned light as adrenaline ran through my system. This guy was dangerous. It felt like he could jump on me and tear me apart whenever he wanted. It only got worse when he looked at me. It was like his hands were reaching out with his gaze, his sharp fingers sinking between my ribs and tearing my chest open. The pain that came with it was enough to blur my vision. I didn't realize my body was frozen until Plex stepped in front of me. And with line of sight broken, I finally regained myself. My hand waved, calling upon the flintlock and raising it toward that madman while my breath turned laborious. I heard Plex's voice. Don't scare the kid, please. He's new. Ha ha ha. At least he didn't piss himself. Usually when people have their chest ripped apart, they tend to forget to keep themselves together. Ha ha. A feeling of weakness came over me while he laughed. At the same time, I saw Rayla move in front of me, pulling my face with her hand. You're bleeding. Just focus on me for a second. She raised a cloth to my face, wiping the blood that had started dripping from my nose. Looking into her eyes was a good way to divert my mind from the vivid illusions of that pain. Dare I say it was rather intimate as I felt her hands ensure that I was okay. Still, I felt a bad migraine come on when all things subsided. Not even her pretty face could distract me from that. Heh, usually people wait until the final hour to come retrieve my packages. But you scurried right over here, didn't you? Hell, sometimes they don't even show up. Business is business, Apocryon. I don't discriminate between clients. I guess that's what makes you so amazing then. That and how prompt you are in responding to my requests. I only had to wait an hour. Here. Looking up, I saw the madman toss a box. Plex caught it, but before he could stash it, Apocryon smiled. Open it. I don't intrude on the privacy of my clients. What's inside is of no business to me. Well, I'm making it your business. Open it. With the man insisting, Plex could only comply. Popping the lock, he gradually opened the container. The four of us looked inside, and we saw a neat pile of black pills. If not for their uniform shape, I would have mistaken them for small pebbles. Those are neat little things called overkill pills. Eat one and your body will become a torrent of power that amplifies your output by several-fold. Warlocks are uninhibited from casting all the spells they can, knights are spurred by seemingly infinite strength, and even summoners are able to call upon countless spirits. Of course, the aftermath is just as violent as the bestowal. The survival rate is currently 0. Apocryon chuckled lowly in excitement. It was Libitus who commented first. The army is going to buy the shit out of these. Right? I'm going to be rich. It will multiply the combatability of our front lines. Just imagine thousands of soldiers taking these pills and massacring the enemy. He laughed maniacally with ambitious words. Plex closed the box at the same time. Then, Rayla lifted my slouching body, whispering to me softly. Get ready to go, kid. You know it's going to be rough on the way out. Shit. I cursed while spurring my body. My head throbbed, but right now, that was probably the least of my worries. As if reading my mind, Apocryon retrieved a bag from his waist. He smiled at us while throwing it. When Plex caught it, we could all hear the familiar clangs of metal coin. Your pay, Sir Delivery Man. 120,000 coin, plus 30,000 for hazard pay. Holy hell. I couldn't help but blurt out. 150,000 coin. That was a massive amount of money. How long would it take me to save that kind of coin? Even then, Plex merely gave a courteous smile. We appreciate the generosity. We will deliver this to the auction house as soon as possible. I admire the confidence in your ability to make it out of here at all. Well, that is why I called you. Apocryon left with those words. And when he disappeared, I raised my gun. My communion with this spirit gave me the skills of that soldier from the Revolutionary War. So when I saw a man jump at us from atop a building, my arm reflexively moved. Bang! It fired, leaving behind a plume of smoke. And the body fell limply to the floor, a hole through its throat. For a few moments, everything was silent until Rayla spoke. That was kind of hot. What was that? That was how we negotiate with criminals in my homeland. Fuck. My head hurts. Let's get the hell out of here. Amen, brother. Libitus laughed while reaching under his coat, retrieving a metal whip with segmented blades on it. Rayla also took out what looked like a small staff. On its end was an arch that cradled a floating heart that pulsed as if alive. Around it, fancy lines appeared. Plex disappeared while smiling. I got the money. See you all at the warehouse. Asshole. I yelled while reloading. It only took several seconds as I easily retrieved a bullet and powder from the dimension, slamming everything down in the barrel. At that moment, several other of those psychos came running at us from all directions. Libitus lashed out with the metal whip, Rayla cast some spells that spit out sharp blades of air, and I took aim. Looks like we're earning our money today. Ugh. Oh yeah, that's tasty. Having fun yet? Libitus snickered while hoisting my arm over his shoulders. He bore the weight of my body as we walked through the Founders Market. One of my eyes was closed, a thick liquid streaming over it. I smelled smoke and my tongue tasted iron. Heh, I don't think I've ever been drenched in my own blood like this before. Am I really not gonna die? Don't worry. Rayla's healing is good enough to keep you alive. Trust in my experience. I see. You have my sympathies. I laughed as we arrived at a building. Kicking open the door, Libitus dragged me into a bright area. It looked like a hospital with sterile white tiles and beds. I looked through my one eye as a nurse came striding over. Before she could even speak, Libitus flicked a gold bullion at her. We both need treatment. A few stab wounds and some blunt trauma. We also have another coming, a woman with red hair. Understood, sir. Right this way. She quickly led us to a couple nearby beds. Libitus lifted me into it before he set himself down on another. Help him first. Don't worry, sir, we can help you both. The nurse reassured Libitus, though she did hurry over to my side and pull open my clothes. My body was riddled with lacerations and a few stab wounds, along with huge nasty bruises on my limbs. The fight out of the trenches was not an easy one. Without Rayla and her healing, I would have died. I killed no small amount of people, but not every shot was precise. Despite the large caliber, those freaks didn't immediately go down unless you hit a vital spot. And smooth-bore flintlocks didn't make marksmanship easy. If I didn't have the inherited skills from that man, there was no way I would be here now. After seeing my wounds, the woman reached into one of her pockets and retrieved a red pill. She plopped it into my mouth, the pill instantly dissolving. There wasn't even anything to swallow. Instead, a hot energy spread through my blood vessels. It gave me energy and dampened the pain, even stopping the bleeding of my wounds. At that time, another doctor came over and took a look at me. The man in a white coat laid out a case of tools on a nearby tray. Before he got to work though, he asked, "Is it safe to put you to sleep, or shall I operate while you are lucid?" I didn't respond, looking over to Libitus. He nodded. "Go ahead and sleep. We're fine." "All right. Then I'll get to work." With that confirmation, the doctor fed me another pill. This one dissolved like the last one, and just like that, I turned drowsy before passing out. When I woke up, my body was racked with a dull pain. When my eyes focused, I turned my head. I could see Libitus on the bed beside me, his back propped up and reading a book. Turning the other way, I saw a red-haired girl asleep on another bed. It was Rayla. I had only known her for a few hours, but my impression of her was good. She was pretty, and unlike the orange hair that was usually associated with redheads on Earth, her hair was actually a blood red. In this world, some people had deep-colored hair like that. While she wasn't jaw-droppingly gorgeous, she was still pretty. She was also mature, perhaps a bit older than me. And as I had discovered, she could be a bit flirty. It was fun. Her wounds were a bit lighter than yours. But with her healing powers, she'll recover just fine. Yours were still the worst of us. It's good that your body is resilient. Libitus commented. Taking my gaze off the sleeping Rayla, I closed my eyes. Yeah, not like it hurt any less. Still, I don't think I've ever pushed myself like that before. I didn't even know I could go that far. You learn things about your limits during battles like those. They're valuable experiences, so long as you survive them. Oh, also. I looked at Libitus while he smiled. You're cut. 25. Like. Yeah. None of us expected him to pay that much, but hey, we earned it. Just don't spend it all in one place. Right. I was a bit dazed. I just earned 25,000 coin. That was more than everything I had earned up until this point. Oh, we also have more deliveries to do over the next couple days. The auctions are always the time for big business. You can expect this kind of stuff every month, especially when the major auctions come around. Of course, this was a special case. Singular payouts aren't quite as big and not nearly as dangerous. But you can expect to make tens of thousands over a mere 3-day period during normal auctions. I like this job. Yeah, it's pretty good. Libitus chuckled and agreed. And not long after, Rayla roused from her sleep. I could see a few lines of stitches on her lithe body, but they had already healed much better than mine. She turned, her eyes focusing on me. Hey sweet cheeks. How's your ass? Oh God, this is not becoming a thing, is it? You bet your tight ass it is. She giggled as I rolled my eyes. One of the several slices on my body happened to be on my butt cheek, which she had to heal so I could keep running. It was embarrassing. Even Libitus laughed. She snickered a bit as I diverted my gaze. Don't worry, hun. I've healed worse. Besides, you've got nothing to be embarrassed about. You're quite well endowed. Thanks. So are you. Ho ho, cheeky boy. Her eyes curved as we smiled at each other. A few minutes later, a doctor came over and checked us all out. Once he gave us a painkiller pill and cleared us, we all grabbed our stuff and left. Our first stop was the warehouse. It was there that we saw Plex. But he wasn't in perfect shape. His clothes were bloodied as he slumped in a chair. The only reason we knew he was alive was because he was drinking a bottle of wine. Oh, you all finally made it. Are you okay? I've been worse. Most of my wounds are internal, so I can only rest to heal. Oh, here are your cuts. Saying that, he took out 3 bags and threw them to us. I caught mine and opened it, seeing 25 gold bullion coins. They were worth 25,000 coin. A stupid grin surfaced on my face. It felt nice, being somewhat rich. And the jingle of gold made my wounds hurt less. Rayla, Plex called while taking a swig of wine. Take John to the Polaris Bank tomorrow and have him open an account. Do it under the company name. He can't be walking around with that coin all the time. All right. For now, I just need to head home. Walk with me? She waved me over while walking out. I glanced at Plex, who seemed to be getting drunk, before striding out with her. We stepped onto the cold streets. Since we always worked at night, seeing nobody out was normal. Though, the sun was beginning to creep up, signaling dawn. Where are you staying? She asked, prompting me to point to the center of the city. The Black Spider Hotel. You have a room there? Yeah, the key master is letting me stay there until I get into the magisterium in a few months. I see. I have an apartment that's in that general direction, though I can't say it's as luxurious. I only had a hotel before, so I understand. I'll walk you home. Why thank you. Don't you go getting any funny ideas though. She pat my cheek with a coy smile, making me chuckle as we walked. You can kick my ass, so I don't have any plans to. And if I couldn't? What would you do to me? How might you ravage me with those funny little thoughts? Hey now, I'm an upright gentleman. No matter how fantastically impure my thoughts are, I wouldn't go ravaging a woman unless she wanted it. Ha! Well, at least you're honest about how horny you are. She smacked my butt as we arrived at the apartment. Alright, I'll meet you tomorrow at around 6. Since you're already there, just find me at the entrance to the Polaris Bank. Afterward, you'll probably be working with me when we get these jobs for auction deliveries. Plex requires us to work them in pairs for safety. Okay. Good night then, John. You did well today. She ruffled my hair with a surprisingly caring and soft voice. I waved as she disappeared into the apartment. Then, I made my way to my room at the hotel. After eating a meal in the morning, I found Rayla at the Polaris Bank. The process to open an account was easy, but the reason more people didn't have one was due to the fact that you needed to open an account under the name of a verified business. Those in the black market evaded taxes in just about every way. Since most currency was tangible and because nobody in the black market wanted to pay taxes, it was difficult for the kingdom to enforce it. But this also meant that banks which didn't enforce tax laws were rare, since they were an institution that could be easily and formally attacked by the kingdom. There was a slew of issues that these banks had to deal with, and as a result, they only accepted clients who were verified by a company that worked in the black market. Of course, the Polaris Bank was even more strict. Not just any black market company could do business with them. But Plex had enough of a reputation to get just about anything apparently, so his company and employees could register with this prestigious institution. The Polaris Bank was nothing to joke about. According to Rayla, it handled enough money to rival the entire kingdom in sheer monetary throughput. That was because the richest people in the black market let their finances be handled by this bank. Naturally, this made Polaris an even heavier behemoth than I initially thought. The place wasn't overly luxurious, but it still looked like a palace when I walked into it. Marble floors inlaid with gold, huge hallways adorned with paintings or statues, and the most courteous clerks I'd ever interacted with. Rayla carried with her the proven identity of the company. Plex's delivery service was formerly known as Divine Distribution. It even had a crest, which was one of the things required to prove the identity. After that, it wasn't long after that I was able to open an account. And I was a bit surprised by their system of profit. Basically, I had to pay a certain amount of money to buy a certain sized account. For the lowest tier, they would store 500 gold bullion for me, which was 500,000 coin. And it would cost 0.5% of the total storage, 2.5 gold bullion, every month in order to keep the account open. It was yet another bill on top of Maxwell's, but nothing I couldn't handle. Considering my pay, I was still profiting amazingly. Plus, that wasn't considering the perks of being a client of the Polaris Bank. After opening an account, I immediately deposited all the spare coin I had on me. With last night's profit of 25,000 coin along with almost a month worth of working, 33,228 coin has been deposited into your account. That's what the clerk told me, and the number had me giddy for a bit. Rayla giggled from beside me as the clerk left to finalize things, causing me to be curious. Hey, how much do you have stored? Do you really want to hear that number? I do. Close to 30 million coin. Huh? I gawked. That was 30,000 gold bullion. I asked with anticipation. Does this job really make you that much? God no. For a while I was in the military, which made me quite a bit more after I hit the high ranks. And when I left I was referred by a friend to work at the Clockwork Association. I made even more there before eventually settling in Plex's company. So while I still make decent money, it's nothing amazing. Wow. I slowly nodded as my mind drifted. How old was Rayla? She looked young, no older than 30. But her words told me that she had many years of experience. And considering that this world was full of magic, it wasn't crazy to think that lifespans were longer. Kind of like the mythical elves that could retain their youthful appearances even at old ages. I suddenly wanted to ask how old she was, but that wasn't very tactful. So what are you? 60? Instead I guessed, earning a snide smirk. You're going to do great with girls when you enter the magisterium. I happen to be a blunt person, especially when I know that you're probably more like half that age. Something like that. At the very least, I'm not that much older than you. I'm 22. Really? This time she looked at me with surprise. I scratched my roughly shaven chin that betrayed my age. I often got told that I looked older than I was. So when I smiled at Rayla, she scoffed and smacked my chest. You kids these days. Hey now, you're not that much older, right? Shut up. I make more money than you. Oh no, my fragile ego. We laughed a bit until the clerk came back. Here you go, John Cooper. The money has been stored and your card has been prepared. Here. The clerk handed me a card. When I felt it, I realized how unique it was. The border of the card was made of gold metal, and its body was like a window that revealed a flowing black film. On this film, I could see the symbol of the Polaris Bank. The clerk explained how to use it. All your money is stored within this bank, but through this card, you can retrieve any amount of your money, at any given time, and in any denomination. So if you desired, you could pull out 33 gold bullion, 330 gold coin, 3,300 silver bullion, or 33,000 silver coin. It all comes from that card right there. Simply tap the symbol and designate how much you wish to retrieve. Oh. Doing as he said, I tapped the golden symbol with my finger. Then, 4 sliders appeared. I designated a single gold bullion, and with a confirmation, the black film fluctuated. You can simply dump out the coin or reach in and pull it out. Oh. I smiled as I reached into the black film, feeling the coin and pulling out the bullion. Cool. As your company is a platinum-level client, you have been granted a gold-level account and card. This means that not only can you retrieve your coin, but you can also deposit your coin simply by inserting it into the card at any time. And should you deposit more money and reach the next level, you would be granted a platinum-level card that comes with even more functionality. Right. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure. If you require anything else, just let me know. The clerk left as I continued to play with the card. It was amazing how I could simply throw the coin in and out of the card. It was literally a portal for my money. Magic is amazing. Rayla smiled as my playful attitude. Alright, be sure you put all your payments straight into that card when you get them. You don't need to get robbed and lose everything. Also, it only works with your specific crest, so don't worry should other people get a hold of it. Oh, even cooler. With that, the two of us left the bank. Our next stop was the warehouse. There, we only found Plex who looked much better than yesterday, yet still beat up. He smiled at us. Hey, you two. Have fun at the bank? This card is cool. Yes, it is. And you'll be using it plenty today. Your jobs are on the table. All of them need to be done by morning. Walking over, Rayla and I saw 8 sheets on the table. All of them required us to head to a location, grab an item and our payment, and deliver the item to the auction house. For these jobs, our clients were located all across the city. Some were close, some came from the Founders Market, and others were farther away. I could already tell it was going to be a long night. We should get started. Rayla sighed while scooping up the papers. Our warehouse was located just outside the city center, putting us right in between the Black Spider and Founders Markets. Making a quick decision, the two of us decided to handle 3 of the jobs that came from the Founders Market. Of course, they were also the most dangerous. Anything going to the auction was a valuable item, and these items were most vulnerable while in transit. So us delivery men, while neutral and immune in the black market, were often targeted by those who didn't care. Being neutral and immune simply meant that, should we kill those from, let's say, the Clockwork Association after a deal gone wrong, we wouldn't be systematically hunted. Conflicts were always considered personal and wouldn't escalate. But again, there were those who simply didn't care. We ran into a few of such people after we had picked up our 3rd item. While crossing through an alleyway, Rayla and I were suddenly surrounded by 4 men. 2 carried swords while the other 2 seemed to be warlocks. I smiled and sighed while looking at the leader. Hello, gentlemen. How can we help you? Drop those packages. Oh, sure thing. Here's the first one. Bang. An explosion rang out as I fired my flintlock. The man in front of me froze for a few seconds before falling to his knees, a large hole now in his chest. I turned to the others with a smile. Who wants the second one? They were silent for a moment before running off, disappearing from our sights. Rayla chuckled as we continued walking. How bold of you. After escaping from the trenches yesterday, I've become severely desensitized. Besides, killing one and scaring three off is better than making them think they have a chance and having to kill all four. Still, I'd rather not have to at all. Yeah, I understand. But that's just how the black market is. Don't feel guilty. She pat my back, and we continued on our way. Fortunately, everything after that was uneventful. Perhaps we got lucky, but we delivered everything to the auction house without a hitch. I also got paid another 14,000 coin even after dividing the profits with Rayla, putting my total savings at nearly 48,000 coin. With that, another day ended. The following day was yet again filled with package deliveries. Rayla and I only exchanged a few hostilities with some unsavory individuals. And while the fights generally ended quickly, both of us did end up exchanging blows. That hurt like hell. I had plenty of wounds that were still in the process of healing, and getting punched or kicked only ended with my stitches getting broken. After killing several and scaring off the rest, we finished our deliveries, headed to the hospital, and got fixed up. Not even those difficulties could put a damper on our mood though. I didn't know what it was, but Rayla and I continued to have fun with each other. The jokes were smooth, the topics kept flowing, the banter was witty. We just clicked. The two of us seemed like best friends even though we had only known each other for a couple days. Of course, there was still plenty we didn't know about each other. It was hard keeping myself from alluding to Earth, and although Rayla had told me something about her former occupations, she never spoke about it in more detail. And I could tell that she had something to hide. I noticed the few times that we got on the topic of relationships. She often poked at how I had no girlfriend, so I would poke back, as I naturally didn't see a boyfriend or husband with her. She played it off, but I could tell how her mood went down. That only happened once, and I tactfully never touched the topic again. Not that she stopped telling me to go get a girl. While we walked, she would often scout some hot ladies, mention how big their boobs were, and tell me to talk to them. I would always refuse, of course, but it was still funny. So another day passed, and finally, it was time for the auction. The black spider market was always flooded during the day of the auction. Thousands of people would flood in from all over the city, even from beyond the city, to be here for the auction. After all, while it wasn't the biggest auction in the kingdom, it was definitely the most valuable. But this month's auction was in a weird spot. The auction following the big quarterly auction was always smaller since the most expensive items were just sold off. That would usually mean that there were little people. But there weren't. In fact, Rayla told me that the number of people was rather high. There was only one reason for that, and the man himself had messed with me while in the trenches. As the dress code was strict, I ended up spending close to 3,000 coin on a nice suit. Rayla had helped me pick it out just before coming to the auction house. It was a simple black suit with gold-threaded embroidery and designs. My white shirt was covered with a black vest, and Rayla had me buy a large trench coat. Apparently that was the style here. All the clothes were supposedly enchanted in some way, allowing them to fit to the user. They were also built with attack-resistant fabric. The trench coat could eat an entire spell and keep me safe. Though, these features were still limited. As things got more expensive, people stopped tracking prices by coin and more so by gold bullion. So while I could buy a coat and clothes that were defensively amazing and had awesome features like self-cooling and cleaning, they would cost a few dozen gold bullion. That was for another time. I felt rather amazing as I walked with Rayla into the auction house. We eventually found Plex and the rest of the company before heading to a suite. It was a suite bought by the Tavera family. There, I once again met the patriarch. Goodness John. How many people have you killed in the last month? You feel very different from the newbie you were when Plex first found you. The 24 new scars on my body would agree with you. I smiled as we shook hands. The older man in front of me stroked his widening beard after separating. Say, how did things go at the Polaris family? I haven't heard anything. Amazing, actually. Maxwell is an interesting teacher, but what he teaches is good stuff. His call had saved my life a few times now. Wait, Maxwell? Alberain? Yeah, that's who I was taken to. The patriarch frowned before turning and looking at Plex. Plex shrugged while munching on some snacks that a maid had brought around, causing the patriarch to shake his head. I see. Well, if it's Maxwell, you can't go wrong. Get as much out of that man as you possibly can. He's getting as much out of me too. I mean, nearly 4,000 coin a week just for lessons. Heh, it's really far more valuable than that. But I will agree that he's a shrewd man. Who are you calling shrewd? We suddenly heard a voice, turning to see a tall man draped in navy blue robes. It was Maxwell, and his presence shocked several people, including the patriarch. Maxwell? I didn't expect to see you here. I had no plans to stop by, but my delinquent student has been missing classes. The summoner approached with a sharp eye, looking me over before huffing. Getting into fights? It pays for your classes, so yeah. I'm sorry I've missed recently, but work has been literally kicking my ass. Now I know that I'll be busy during the auctions. I figured. Well, battles will help with your communions anyway. In fact, maybe you should get into more. You. Maxwell suddenly pointed to Plex, who hummed in confusion. Send this kid to whatever jobs you have in the trenches. What? That place is a good training ground. As lawless as it is complex. Wahaha. Plex started laughing as my face fell. No way in hell am I going back to that hellhole. Especially not with the shitty weapons I have now. Yes, you'll need to be stronger, attain better summons. So here. Maxwell reached into his pocket and took out a large crystal and a small book. I took both as he explained. Follow the formations in the book and use that white crystal to cultivate your crest to the next authority. I thought you couldn't do that without the magisterium. They'll overlook it if it's just 1 or 2 levels. It might even help you since you're a bit too old to be entering as an authority 1. Oh. I'll omit this week's pay, so don't come back until you get your second authority. Remember, the faster you advance, the higher the chances of your survival. And Plex, if I find that he isn't in the trenches, I'll be paying you a visit. Do not inhibit my teachings. Hee, yes sir. Plex chuckled evilly as Maxwell turned to leave. Rayla pat my back in sympathy. It was nice knowing you, John. Shut up. I should take you with me. No thanks. I've paid my dues. And hey, the jobs for the trenches at least pay well. Contrary to what people believe, those gremlins are rich. She laughed as I contemplated how difficult the coming days were going to be. Not long afterward, the auction began. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to officially announce the beginning of the 4th monthly auction. Everyone clapped as the auction started. This was as much of a social convention as it was a time of business. This meant that drinks and food were plentiful among the stands. As the Tavera family was paying for everything in the suite, I didn't keep myself from grabbing anything that looked good. And as I found out, many of the candies were divine while the alcohol was rich. I was one of the few who took a seat by the window. The rest were socializing, including Rayla, who apparently had some friends within the Tavera family. So I was by myself for a while as the introductory items were being shown off. I could hear everything clearly through the glass, the noise being amplified by magic. A colossal goat horn, enough to make a full set of armor or construct the chassis of a carriage. Starting price, 25 gold bullion. I saw a truly massive horn appear on stage. It was at least 10 feet tall and 40 feet long. It really could be used to build the chassis of a vehicle. I wondered what kind of monstrosity the colossal goat was to have such huge horns. A container of 85 bone-burrowing beetles, for any of your alchemical needs. Starting price, 45 gold bullion. That box was worth the entirety of my savings at just the starting price. An air mask, constructed from the treated leather of a fire lamb and infused with a grade 4 white crystal. This device can not only filter all the air you breathe, but even boost your stamina. Starting price, 30 gold bullion. That was an interesting one that I might have considering trying to get if I could afford it. But unfortunately, it sold at about 75 gold bullion. The newest prototype of Sant's line of transmission devices, the Ariel 8. The details of this device have been purposefully omitted by request of the seller. Starting price, 70 gold bullion. The prices only continued to go up as each item went by. The average price quickly climbed past 100 gold bullion, and every single one was bought casually. Millions of coin being thrown around just like that. And these were just the introductory items. Eventually, the time for introductions were over. More expensive items starting at a minimum of 500 gold bullion started rolling out. From entire sets of armor to crazy intricate weapons, these were high-quality items that could be wielded by those with up to 7 authorities. But nobody seemed to care much. Nobody within my suite paid much mind to those things. And I suppose everyone at this auction was waiting for just one thing. I continued to sit around, eating all the shockingly delicious food that was being handed out. That was, until the door swung open again. Maxwell? The sharp summoner came strolling back unannounced. He walked straight up to me. In his hands were 2 items. Air mask and Ariel. These were 2 of the introductory items. I slowly grabbed them as he explained. The trenches are filled with toxic fumes and drugged air. You'll want the mask to keep you healthy. And use the aerial to contact people. Also, they said something about Son personally wanting to do some stuff with you and the aerial. If you had let me finish, I would have told you what. Suddenly, another man came striding into the room. He was scrawny, like a scientist, and on his face was a pair of glasses that flashed with displays. They looked like futuristic holographic glasses. He walked over to me, grabbing the aerial, which I had surmised was a magic phone. He spoke with haste, as if his mind were filled with a million thoughts. Son, pleased to meet you. This is a prototype model, okay? Prototype. That means it's not perfect and still needs to be adjusted to suit you until I can create a standardized model. Now I can't spill all the details, but this thing can basically connect to your mind, to some extent at least. This new feature is limited for now until I work out the kinks, but nonetheless, still extremely useful. Also, this thing can work independently, regardless of if there are repeater nodes around you. I believe the maximum pulse transmission is 40 miles in all directions, and standard transmission is 10 miles in all directions. Trust me, far more capable than whatever else those dogs at Hero Aerial Works are cooking up. The man, Son, went on a spiel about all the different things that this device could do. In short, it was a phone. This world had phones apparently, although the ones cheap enough for the common man were limited in function. Still, they provided revolutionary communication abilities. And this man, Son, was the owner of Son Industries. He created these phones, and this was his prototype model. Apparently, he decided to sell one in order to test it out in the field. And Maxwell bought it. As I started to zone out from all his droning on, the man suddenly grabbed my wrist. Alright, this thing goes on your wrist right under your crest, which it binds to, like all the other models. Snap. Touching the device to my wrist, it automatically unfurled and snapped around the joint, becoming a metal wristband that sat flush against my skin. It wasn't uncomfortable, surprisingly. Now, you can only send information from your mind to the device. The device can't send things to your mind, at least not yet. It is built for it though. So, in order to read things you still have to manually activate the device and read them with your two eyeballs, yes? But, you can now write messages and send them with your mind. You just have to speak them in that empty head of yours and they'll appear on the screen. Now, I'll also be monitoring this device and its functionality to collect operating data so I can perfect it. This is what you have signed up for by buying it. But I didn't. Of course, I won't see nor will I care about the messages you send or receive. I know you elites care about secrecy and all that schnazzle. So just use it as normal and pretend that I'm not connected to the thing. I only need data. Data? Okay. Why yes. Good. He nodded before standing and walking away. Oh. One more thing. He stopped and turned back around. You're a summoner? Yes, you are. So, you use Psycha, which is the more elusive of the three. If things go well, I might be able to activate the function so you can also receive data in your mind, since summoners are like that. Only if it goes well. Now, I will be in contact. And please, use the aerial as much as you can. I need data. With that, Son finally walked out, leaving me in a small daze. Everyone was staring at me, prompting me to hide my wrist and mask behind my body. Mine. Ha ha ha. I can't believe that was Son. He's filthy rich too. Patriarch Tavera laughed before going back to his business. Maxwell then walked up to me, showing his wrist which also had one of these devices on it. Touch. Tap. He touched the device to mine, and a screen appeared above my wrist. Add Maxwell Alberain as a contact? Yes. I confirmed in my mind, and sure enough, he was added to my contact list. I could send and receive messages from him. We could even exchange pictures and videos. Real-time calls were also possible. It was a full-fledged telephone. Wow. Pay me back by hurrying up and getting your next authority. With those words, he left once again. Perhaps all those payments every week was worth it. As I admired the aerial and mask, Rayla came up to me with a smile. Extending her wrist, she tapped my aerial, exchanging contact info. I naturally have one too. So does everyone else in the company. Get their contact info when you can. Sure. Thanks. We smiled at each other. After that, there were no more surprises as the auction continued on. There were dozens of items that got introduced and sold off after the course of several hours. Many of them sold for beyond 1,000 gold bullion. The total monetary exchange in just 5 hours was at least 80 million coin. It was a baffling number, but none of it could compare to what was to come. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you, the final item of the auction. This is what you all have been waiting for. It was after several hundred more people had flooded into the auction house. The auctioneer had a broad smile on his face as a small cart was rolled out. On top of it was a single box, one that I recognized. The notorious Apocryon has spread the news far and wide. He has concocted a revolutionary item he calls the overkill pills. These pills are capable of increasing a person's combat power by several times, even on the verge of death. The duration of this increase depends on the user and how long their body can survive the rampaging power. However, despite the amazing effects, taking one of these pills almost certainly ensures your demise. They should only be taken in the direst of circumstances. Apocryon has dictated one condition for the selling of this product. Not only is he selling a small batch of pills here today, but he is selling an exclusivity contract. The contract will last 2 years, and for that duration, only the buyer can receive these pills to do whatever they wish with them. Holy shit. The auction house was uproarious at the news. Even Patriarch Tavera couldn't help but curse. An exclusivity contract was huge. Because not only would the buyer become the sole owner of any and all pills that were produced, but they could sell them as they wished. It was a monopoly of the product. This was much bigger than simply selling a batch of pills in an auction house. Ha! Truly a madman. I can't imagine how much money he's going to make tonight. Plex was laughing with a drink in his hand. As for me, I was just enjoying the show. I was happy enough with my new magic phone. There are more details that Apocryon will personally discuss with the buyer, but that will come later. Ladies and gentlemen, I officially open the bidding starting at 20,000 gold bullion, 20 million coin. I was baffled at the starting price. Even more so at the subsequent shouts. There were only 3 big names that sounded out. 50,000, 80,000, 120,000, 200,000. The price quickly rose beyond anything I could comprehend. And from beside me, Plex pointed at 3 other suites that stood suspended above the stands. I'm telling you right now, the only 3 bidders for this stuff are the Polaris family, the church, and the fucking dragon military. A black market behemoth, a religious order, and the damn kingdom itself are fighting for this stuff with money we could never touch in our lives. With a single fucking pill, Apocryon got the big names to move. Haha. Plex started laughing, half because of the absurdity, half because of how drunk he was. I leaned over toward Rayla. I know the kingdom and Polaris family are big, but the church? Yes, the church is a behemoth on equal grounds. That's because they invented the crystal purification system. And that is? The most important technique ever created in the history of mankind. Rayla looked down at the bidding ground with a neutral face. The scourge is a threat that grows by the year. Monstrosities raid our borders every day, armies of mutant humanoids that seek to kill us all. And they all carry crystals, the incarnation of their power. However, their power is tainted, poisonous. Consume that power, and you would turn into a monstrosity yourself. But the church created a way to purify the crystal, turning it into a magic engine that pulls in and stores a universal power called Magicka. This Magicka can turn into any of the 3 energies that knights, warlocks, and summoners can use to advance their authorities. The crystals can also be used to create enchanted items, like your new mask. She pointed at the air mask on my lap. Since the crystal is an engine that constantly pulls in energy, simply tapping into that flow can power objects. It revolutionized the world as we know it. And the church has sole control over that method? Well, they have sole control over the best method. Others have been created, but they don't have the results that the church does. So naturally, the church is a behemoth that sits at the top of the world. Wow. And now they're all fighting for this. 1 million. Another call sounded out. By this point, the entire auction house was silent. Only, after the price reached a whopping 1 billion coin, nothing else was heard. The auctioneer, who hadn't spoken in several minutes, suddenly raised his hand. 1 million gold bullion, going once. Going twice. Sold. The hammer slammed down, yet unlike all the other times, no name was announced. In fact, it all seemed suspicious. They'll probably negotiate in private. There's no way you can simply buy something this important. Plus, they're not going to dump more than that into a single man, let alone a madman like Apocryon. Plex scoffed while taking another swig of what I could only assume was pure ethanol by the smell. And with that, the auction officially ended. We stood with Patriarch Tavera, everybody funneling out of the room. It was surprising that I actually came out of this with 2 new toys, but regardless of that, I had witnessed something rather amazing here. And to think that I had been a part of the delivery team that transported this billion-coin item. Even if everything that happened was just for show. Ding! Ugh! Son of a bitch! Bang! My flintlock fired into a man's abdomen, one who just hit me with a metal pole. He slumped over after I kicked him away, proceeding to walk my way out. Over my face was the air mask. As Maxwell had said, it was crucial for staying healthy while in the trenches. Sure, you could go in for a day and come out fine, but over several days? The mask was a lifesaver, especially since the smell of drugs and odor was unbearable. Even more, the air that I breathed was so fresh and revitalizing that it gave me more stamina. I could run and fight for much longer, which was similarly a lifesaver. Ring! Suddenly, I felt my aerial phone go off on my wrist. I looked at it and saw Rayla's name. I answered, her voice echoing in my mind. Hey sweet cheeks. How's the job? Fucking fantastic. Just got whacked in the leg with a pole. What's the other guy look like? A bloody mess on the floor. Then it seems you're still fine. I smiled as we conversed in my mind. It had only taken 2 weeks for Son to activate the mind function of the Ariel 8 prototype. This meant I could carry out calls, see messages, and send pictures all from the comfort of my brain. But apparently, this was only because I was a summoner. Psycha, the power of the mind that summoners wielded, made all this far easier than with knights or warlocks. We kept talking as I summoned a hatchet and chopped at a man who jumped out at me with a knife. Splat. So is that suit working well? Now that you're testing it and all. It's definitely made a difference. I spoke while turning, flicking my arm and sending the hatchet flying. The blade buried itself into another man several meters away. Walking past the fresh corpse, the hatchet disappeared, going back to the dimension. Rayla chuckled. I would hope so. You spent 30,000 coin on it. Yeah. I mean, I'm not taking nearly as many wounds as I used to, but for those rare occasions, it's definitely doing its part in keeping me alive. Just a few hours ago it managed to stop a sword from cutting through. It even mitigates some of the impact. And it looks sharp on you. Of course. That's the most important part. I smiled as the end of the trenches territory showed itself. Making my way into the territory of the Clockwork Association, I found a certain building number and knocked. What? Special delivery. I yelled back to the rude voice. Soon after, the door swung open, revealing a short old lady. Here. 2,200 coin. Now get off my doormat. After tossing a sack of coin and snatching the package, the door was slammed shut. Compared to my recent clients, she was a saint. I turned and waved. Pleasure doing business. Off my doormat. Another yell came from the building, making me laugh. I then sighed. Finally done with the day. Don't you have class? That'll probably be tomorrow. I'm still on the verge of getting my second authority. It'll probably happen tonight. Oh, well hurry and train then. You know, that's another thing that's always surprised me about you. What's that? I questioned while calling a carriage, having it take me to the Black Spider Hotel. Rayla spoke with skepticism. You're strong for your level. I mean, you're only Authority 1, and you can kill those well above your own power. Well, I still have trouble with knights. Yes, those tough ones seem to be your weakness. But again, you're only on your first authority. Probably just the nature of my summons. I shrugged. I didn't know how I was supposed to explain the technology behind guns in relation to the magical powers of this world. Soon, I arrived at the hotel. Alright, I'll see you tomorrow. I'm home. Sure thing, sweet cheeks. I ended the call with a smile. At the same time, I nodded to the keymaster. He smiled back. Good morning, John. Likewise, keymaster. Thank you for the hospitality. You say that every time you come through here. Instead, I should be congratulating you in advance on a successful advancement. Heh, nothing gets past you. I do my best. He tipped his hat as I walked past. Enjoy your rest, John. Thank you, keymaster. With that, I headed up to my room. Upon entry, I went and stripped my clothes in the bathroom. It was there that I turned on the bath and dumped them in the water. Just like that, my nice clothes had all the dirt and blood stripped right off them. Even the water slid off as I picked them back up. Perfectly clean in just a few minutes. That's what 30 gold bullion gets you. The suit I had spent a significant amount of my savings on was, like my first suit, black with gold embroidery. As there was no worry about getting it dirty, defensively it could eat spells and block swords, and it could moderate its internal temperature, I decided that it would be my normal wear. Even my underwear had fancy enhancements on it. I called the temperature enhancement on it the ball chiller. Being a summoner, I didn't need to carry weapons on me like knights did. Anything else I needed to carry was small and could fit in pockets, which my trench coat had plenty of. So I always looked good, though not overly outstanding. My suit wasn't something that would catch the attention of anyone I couldn't handle in a fight. After cleaning my body up for the night, I climbed into bed. It was 6 weeks past my encounter with Apocryon and the night at the auction house. Since then, I had been training my authority and doing jobs. The trench jobs really did pay more. The average job paid at least 3 times more than otherwise. The cost for this extra pay though were at least 8 trips to the hospital. I've gotten treated for stab wounds, poison, broken bones, and a slew of other small issues. I was lucky that this magical world had fantastic medical care, as with enough money, I could recover from everything without a hitch. I even bought some recovery pills from the hospital that I could take during battles. Those kept me going, temporarily keeping my injuries from getting worse and buying me time. I had really ridden the line of death over these past weeks. But hopefully things would be a bit easier soon. As I laid in my bed, I glanced at a large bruise on my thigh before grabbing a small book and crystal. They were the 2 items Maxwell gave me, and I had been training with them ever since. The process to train my authority involved accumulating more power using the crystal as an engine. You couldn't simply train your own power. That was like a battery trying to power itself. Instead, you needed an external energy source. That's what the crystal was. And the book contained spell formations that allowed me to direct the power in a certain way that wouldn't hurt me. Deviating from those formations hurt like hell, so I quickly learned how to use them properly. Now, I was on the verge of getting my second authority. I could feel it. In my mind, I saw the second star fill with energy over time. It was a tedious process, but now, it was almost completely full. Just one more push. I mumbled to myself as I grabbed the crystal and started training. Energy moved into my body, bypassing my physical self and seeping straight into my mind. I could see the second star of 13 glisten. Then, an hour passed. It was at this time that I felt a reaction. All that power had reached a boiling point. I could suddenly feel a connection to the star. It was like a wall was breaking down. I was gaining access to something. Power beyond me was finally within reach. And I grabbed it. Flash! The star shone before all the power swirled into a vortex. It shattered the wall, and before I could react, my mind was flooded with information. The second dimension was opened, and through it, I could see more spirits. But all the energy within me was simultaneously drained, leaving me exhausted. I staved off my desire to pass out though and looked into the dimension. What I saw. I didn't know if I was happy or not. Percussion cap weapon, both pistols and rifles. The percussion cap system was far more reliable than the flintlock system. In fact, in the past several weeks there were a few days when it rained. Those days, I outright didn't leave for work since my flintlock pistol couldn't operate when wet. Even if it could, it would be horribly unreliable, and mistakes could mean death for me. So percussion cap weapons were definitely more reliable and easier to reload. But I had been hoping for something like a multi-chamber revolver. Well, things aren't going to be that much easier. I'll probably have to climb to Authority 3 before getting 6 shooters. Luckily this book knows how. This book that Maxwell gave me had the formations for Authority 3, and since he said that advancing a few authorities wasn't an issue with the Magisterium, I decided that I would do so. It took me 6 weeks, but 3 of those weeks were spent getting used to the spell formation. If I can figure things out faster, I might be able to advance again in a month. Well, I'll ask Maxwell tomorrow since I can return to class now. I mumbled while closing the book and putting away the crystal. With that, I went to sleep. Only 6 weeks, huh? Pretty fast, for someone who only activated their crest a couple months ago. Yes, but unfortunately the new summons aren't that much stronger. They're basically more reliable weapons, maybe a bit better in terms of power, but that's it. I see. Well, not out of the ordinary. You won't start seeing significant changes until the latter authorities. Still, there are many things to teach you until then. So sit and listen. Oh, and your bill has increased to 5 gold bullion a week. What? Even numbers, you know? He shrugged, and I could only fork out 5 shiny gold coins. They fell from my card into his hand, which he immediately tossed into his own card, which was of the platinum level. After that, I got to listen to a long lecture that only stopped after the sun had risen. When it was over, I dragged myself out, though not before giving Maxwell a reminder. By the way, the auction is coming up again soon. Of course. Just focus on training your next authority. Oh, and did you get a suit from that man I told you to visit? Yes, I'm wearing it right now. It was Maxwell who referred me to a tailor who made these special suits, telling me to buy one if I wanted to survive. In the end, I spent 30 gold bullion on the one Rayla and I had spoken about the day before. Very well. Oh, take this crystal, and hand me back the other one next time. Use the new one for training. It's more powerful. He tossed me a white crystal, one that was identical to the previous, only bigger. With that, I finally left for the day. My next few weeks were filled with training and working. The reason Maxwell wanted me to face adversity in the trenches was because utilizing my spirits naturally trained me as a summoner, especially since I had cold summons. And I had learned a lot through daily battles. The process of charming to form a communion became far smoother than at first. I also learned a special aspect of the call of the fallen angel that had saved my neck several times. Spirits weren't limited to their summoned forms. Basically, I could pump my psyche into these spirits, making them stronger. This allowed my guns to hit harder at the expense of my energy. When faced with knights who had atrociously strong and resilient bodies, normal bullets didn't cut it. Instead, I spent chunks of my energy, empowering the spirit and giving it stronger shots that could kill those knights. And it was this ability that continued to secure my life in the following weeks. Soon, my third auction came around. It marked the 6th month of the year, which meant it was the second quarterly auction. The major auction that was graced by Vatsy's gala. The Black Spider market was festive even before the auction began. The anticipation was high, and I myself was raking in the big bucks. I was paired with Rayla again as we ran jobs for the auction. Thankfully, nothing like the encounter with Apocryon happened again, though that didn't mean it wasn't dangerous. We were attacked several times, even outside the black markets. It was like these thieves could smell how valuable our cargo was because they always seemed to come out of nowhere. Thankfully Rayla was powerful. Her warlock spells could take people out faster than my pistols could. We still got a few injuries though, ending up in the hospital a couple times. But it was all worth it. Precisely, it was worth the 28,000 gold profit. These quarterly auctions were big. And we were privileged enough to attend them. When the day came, I picked out my formal suit and met the company at the auction house. Inside, there were dancers on a stage and an entire orchestra that was playing swing music. The entire place was filled with the aroma of alcohol, perfume, and delicious food. It was a massive party, all hosted by the bigwig Vatsy. Throw on your masks, and have fun. Of course, another symbol of the gala was the masquerade. Everyone received a mask, one that matched our attire. After putting them on, a few of the guys dispersed, Plex included. Rayla and I, on the other hand, linked arms and wandered around the place. Occasionally we took some snacks, and most of the time we were talking about whatever came to mind. Spending some time at the bar, she would pick out some suitable females that she tried to get me to talk to. All of them were rather gorgeous. Not even the masks could conceal their beauty. But as always, I refused. And in the end, she invited me for a dance. Unfortunately, while I knew how to dance, I didn't know anything from this world. So she was the one who had to lead. I quickly picked up on what seemed to be a combination of square dancing and the tango. It was complex but rhythmic, and after feeling each other for a while, we matched our tempo. Of course, I couldn't help but be tripped up a few times. But everything between us was fun, so we just laughed and kept going. Then, I took the lead and taught her some stuff that I knew. Some simplified tango was fun as I led her around the floor. She was agile as she followed my feet, our bodies almost pasted together while we moved. I knew it wasn't just me as the heat grew. Eventually our smiles turned somber, our gazes locked onto each other's, our eyes sharp almost like we were mad at each other. And then, the music slowed. We came to a stop, her chest pressed against mine and our hot breaths brushing against the other's face. And just when it seemed like something would happen. Ring! I heard the aerial ring in my mind. It was a call from Libitus. It drew my attention, and as soon as my eyes were diverted, Rayla took a breath and backed off. Sorry, Libitus is calling me. No, it's fine. I need a drink anyway. She smiled as we walked off the dance floor. I made my way to a bar while Rayla excused herself. I met with Libitus who grabbed me and pulled me to the side. Hey, there's something you should know. What? I asked weirdly while grabbing some random wine off a tray. Libitus seemed serious as he spoke. It's about Rayla. I need you to trust me and avoid trying anything with her. What do you mean? Please, I saw you two down there. For the past month you two have gotten really close. And I don't want that to change since she's been a lot happier since you've come around. But please, don't get seriously romantic. For her sake. Why? I got curious. Being honest with myself, I've come to really like Rayla. She was smart, mature, had a great sense of humor, and was beautiful. I couldn't say I hadn't thought of pursuing anything, but Libidus was making me morbidly curious. He shook his head with a sigh. I'm not sure I should tell you. It's her business. Hey, let's not play these games. Tell me, or I'll just go ask her about it myself. Because I like her too much to beat around such an important detail. Fine. He gave in, but before he spoke, he grabbed a cup and downed all its contents. After a cough, he looked around before turning his voice low. Look, she's been married before. It wasn't long before she joined the military that she found her husband. Both of them were warlocks, so they joined together. But, he didn't make it out. He spoke with lingering sorrow. She's been depressed for years since they had been trying for a child. Still probably hasn't gotten over it. But when you two met, she's been all bright and happy. You're a good man, John, and normally I'd say you two would be good together. But, I don't think she's in the position to get involved romantically. I don't know if she'll ever be. They seriously loved each other. I mean, she almost killed herself over it. The scourge took her man in the worst way possible. Plus, you're quite a bit younger than her. The facts don't mesh, and I don't want things to be ruined between you two because of that conflict. I was silent, processing these shocking revelations. Libidus sighed when he glanced at me, downing another cup. I'm sorry, John. But please trust me on this. You two can get as chummy as you want, but keep it as friends. If you try to take it that one step further, I don't see it ending well for either of you. It'll just be an amazing friendship brought to an unnecessary halt. Thank you for telling me. I responded dully, grabbing an entire bottle of alcohol off a butler's tray and taking a swig. I pinched my temples. I'll think about it. Well, no need to do it sober. But keep things up like this, and you'll probably have to make the decision tonight. Oh, she's coming. Libidus smiled and waved while Rayla walked over. With my back facing her, I clenched my jaw before taking another drink and turning around. Hey, care to join us? I offered with a wide smile, waving the bottle around in front of her face. She smirked and took it, taking a swig with a scrunched face. Bleh, that's strong. At least get me something tasty. Of course. Let's head to the Tavera suite and drink there though. Like that, the three of us got ourselves comfortable in the first-class seating that was armed with a private bar. And so, the quarterly auction was kicked off, filled with happiness and hidden sorrows. Contains descriptive sex scenes. Proceed at your own peril or pleasure. He. God, you're so drunk. No, definitely not. I'm an American. I can hold my liquor. Yes, I know. It's the only reason you haven't passed out yet. I mean, 5 bottles. Rayla chuckled wryly as she practically carried John. Recalling the night, although it seemed like he just wanted to let a little loose, she felt something was off. It was when he was left alone. It only took a glance to see the hollow stare. And it was only when she moved into his line of sight that he would perk back up and drink a bit more. He downed hard liquor like water, impressing even the knights of the Tavera family. And for some reason he made it known that he was what they called an American. That's what everyone was calling him by the end of the night. Now here he was, basically slung over her shoulder as she dragged him back to her house. And there was one other thing that concerned her. On their way out of the Black Spider Market, she passed by the key master. The two were acquainted. It was his words that made her think. You have something good, Rayla Nolovich. Sorry? His comment had made her heart constrict. Nolovich. That was her late husband's surname. After he died, she no longer kept it since she couldn't carry that family name without him. So that name triggered deep memories that she didn't want to remember. She glanced at his oddly gentle face. A true friendship is an amazing thing, but still nothing more. She didn't respond to that. But she still thought about it deeply as she unlocked the door to her apartment. Oh, am I actually in a girl's house? Are you 12? Here, just lay on the couch. I'm banished to the couch. She rolled her eyes as John sighed, lowering him onto the cushions. Then she sat on the armrest by his head. He was already dozing off. When he shifted, she could see him glance at her through half-closed eyes. She reached down, brushing back some of his hair. The two were quiet, simply staring at each other. There were so many things that both of them wanted to say, but there was much more that was better left unsaid. Both of them had straightforward personalities, but in this moment, their desire to carefully tread an invisible line took hold. What they desired and what they knew they should do conflicted. In the end, Raya spoke first. "Why didn't you go talk to those girls?" It seemed like a joking question, but it made John's mind spin. He could say he didn't talk to them because he'd rather be with her. It would give him exactly what he wanted, which was to take that step forward. But it wouldn't align with what he wanted for Rayla, which was to maintain their friendship. Rayla didn't know that Libidus told him about her late husband. She didn't know that he had been thinking for hours about what was best for both of them. She surely had the same conflict in her mind. Was she ready to get into a serious relationship? Would she mess it up because of her past? And before all that, did she want to chain John to herself? Or did she want him to be with someone that didn't have all the baggage she did? And her question meant one thing. She was leaving the decision to him and his desires. If he wanted it, then she would do it. If he didn't, maybe. John mumbled lightly, stopping for a moment as he relaxed his tightening throat. "I think I was just nervous." "Nervous? Yeah. Indecisive. Afraid. I can't say I'm the smoothest talker. Maybe I would mess things up." She was silent, but after a while, John asked, "Did you want me to talk to them?" "Well?" Her voice was unusually soft yet filled with emotion that threatened to burst. Taking a deep breath, she slipped off the arm of the chair and kneeled on the floor in front of the couch. Her head leaned on the cushion. She didn't respond for close to a minute. And when she finally lifted her head, she had a small sorrowful smile. "I was just trying to get you a girlfriend. A lot of those chicks come from rich families. They would be good picks." "That's true. Not that I care about that." "Yeah? Promise me something." She lifted her head and leaned forward. "I need this, but promise me, this will never happen again." She said that, and after moving forward, she locked her lips with his. It was the last thing I expected, and something that I had told myself not to do so many times during the auction. I was still buzzed from the drinks, my head woozy. But ever since training to the second authority, my head gained the ability to remain clear despite the intoxication. But that kiss hit me like a truck. It was deep, carrying passion that made my eyes roll. And it lasted way too long. It was too hot. It crossed the line. My sense of reason was already clouded, despite having affirmed my decision for hours. This was the last straw. It only took a few minutes, and I barely realized that she was on top of me. Our bodies entangled as our tongues writhed between our lips. I don't know who was first, but at some point, a shirt came off. Then two. My brain went fuzzy when her bra popped off. Her large bust hung in front of my face, her two pink nipples hardened in anticipation. Then, her hand ran down my chest. I could feel her grab my pants, but our eyes remained locked on each other's. But for a moment, it seemed like she hesitated. As if there was any room for that now. Suddenly I pulled my body up, putting her on her back. Then I stood up, throwing off my pants. She followed just as I did, stripping off the rest of her dress. She didn't speak, but put her hand out to keep me from returning to the couch. I got tingly as she leaned toward my cock, and wrapped her lips around it. It was a new feeling, something I had never done before. But now, it was definitely my favorite. It was warm, wet, and the way she treated it so tenderly had me bursting in just a couple minutes. My liquid of life dripped across her chest, turning it glossy. And when I looked down, taking in the sight of her perfectly toned body that displayed the scars of all her battles, I wasn't even allowed to go soft. Especially when I saw her fingers massaging her lower lips. Pushing her back down onto the couch, I lowered my head, and got to work. I could feel her squirm, her legs twisting in odd ways before wrapping around my head. Her fingers gripped my hair as my tongue found the most sensitive place on her body. She smelled good, and her skin was totally bare. It made the process enjoyable for me, especially since I could feel every pulse of pleasure through her body as her limbs writhed in unison. And she only lasted a bit longer than me. I knew it when her body convulsed, her voice leaking out in moans of ecstasy. I backed off when that happened, pleasuring the area around her pussy like her legs, slowly moving my way up to her neck before planting a hot kiss. We both gasped in heat before she moved her body and pushed me down. Taking control, she sat on top of me with her hand on my dick, guiding me straight into her without suspense. Her body slowly wrapped around me, slipping through until she touched down. I could hear her shakily moan the entire way, as if unable to handle her excitement. And at first, she slowly moved. We felt each other, getting into a rhythm, finding what we liked. And when we clicked, it got faster, rougher, and hotter. Our bodies slammed against each other, both our moans echoing through the apartment. I watched her face contort, her chest bounce, until she laid her body against mine and locked lips. We continued even as we kissed, filling our minds with nothing but the heat of passion. And then, I twitched. Feeling that, she pulled back and looked me in the eyes. She slammed her hips down, as if reading me like a book. And I came, releasing everything straight into her. The feeling of looking straight into her eyes as that happened was indescribable. And I could see it in her face, the look of overflowing satisfaction and happiness. We sat there for several seconds, our bodies quivering until I had regained any semblance of conscious thought. But despite finishing twice already, I wasn't done. I flipped us over, bearing down from above and continuing on. She responded in kind, angling her body in just the right way, looking me straight in the eye as she moaned in euphoria. I could feel her strong body as she clung to me, and I made sure to relish every inch. It seemed that nothing but my fingers clutching her body sent waves of pleasure through her. Her entire body was sensitive, and she seemed to understand that as she writhed against me. And I could feel her climax. It was a spasmodic orgasm that shook her voice and made her nails dig into my back. And whenever she did, I would follow, as if our bodies were in sync. But 1 or 2 times didn't seem to be enough. We just kept going. There seemed to be no end to our stamina or carnal desire. I couldn't tell if it was lust or love, because both of us indulged in each other as if we would do so for the rest of our lives. We could see nothing but each other. So neither of us noticed when the sun had come up, or when 4 hours had passed. I wasn't even able to remember the end of it. All the alcohol, the ecstasy, and the intoxication skewed my rationale. So it ended only when we both passed out. I wasn't sure when I woke up, but I quickly realized that I wasn't the first. And it took a few seconds, but when I saw the messy sheets of the bed and started recalling the night before, I fucked up. I had done just about everything I told myself not to, if not more. Not only that, I had finished inside of her. Ah, shit. I was way too drunk. I felt waves of regret. This seriously wasn't good for either of us. And I wasn't thinking I'd become a father just a couple months after coming to an entirely new world. Well, I'd own up to it like a man if I had to. Still, I spent close to half an hour wallowing in shame before finally pulling myself up. I knew she had a shower since that was one of our stops the night before. So walking into the bathroom connected to her bedroom, I threw it on and washed up. As for the hangover, I barely had a headache. All the alcohol was high quality, and combined with my vigorous body, I guess I had avoided a large part of the hurt. When I rinsed and came back out, I found my clothes folded on the bed that had been remade. Feeling another wave of shame, I threw on my pants and shirt while slinging my coat over my shoulder. It looked less like a walk of shame that way. Then, I steeled myself as I left the bedroom. My heart throbbed in my chest when I saw Rayla in the kitchen. She was holding a jar, grabbing small cookies out of it and tossing them in her mouth with seeming anxiety. She froze when she saw me, and for a few seconds, neither of us reacted. Until she smiled. "Hey, how's the hangover?" "Fine. Just a small headache." "Impressive." I didn't smile as cheerily as she did. First, I glanced out the window, seeing that the sun was already setting. Then I sighed and walked over to the dining table, standing behind a seat. "I'm sorry, I have to ask." I could feel my face burn as I spit it out. "Last night, beyond all other outstanding issues, I wasn't exactly restrained with how much I finished inside you." "That?" As if not expecting that to be my concern, she tilted her head. "Putting aside the difficulty for Magi to have kids anyway, there's tons of magic for that. So, no, I'm not going to be pregnant." "Oh, thank the Lord. That seemed to be weighing on you pretty heavily." She had a small smile as I slumped over the table in relief. I sighed. "Of course. I'm 22 and absolutely not ready to be a father. I mean, I've still got so much to do before I can settle." I stopped there. That might have been insensitive. I could imagine that the crux of the matter for Rayla was if she was willing to get in a relationship with me, who was only 22, and when she had the baggage that she did. We were supposed to stay friends. That way, both of us could be happy. She would have a friend that brightened up her life, and I could still pursue someone that would be a better fit for me while having a close friend of my own. But those plans of simplicity all shattered when she went in for that kiss. And now we were here. For a while I couldn't seem to raise my head and face her, because I didn't know what I was supposed to do now. but it seemed she already had an idea. "Hey, John," she called with a soft voice. When I lifted my head, I saw her gentle smile. "What happened last night was entirely on me. I know what you wanted, yet I let my desires take hold. I won't make excuses. So I apologize. And, shit, I don't know." "Hey," I interrupted her, giving her a smile. "We're both straightforward people, right? Let's not make it complicated." I said that as I walked over, putting myself in front of her and sticking my hand out. "Things are good, yeah? Let's just keep having fun like we have been. Okay?" She stared at me for a second before glancing down at my hand that was waiting for a shake. Rolling my eyes, I reached out and grabbed her opposite hand, placing it in mine and shaking it. "Pleasure doing business." "Wahahaha." She broke out in a fit of laughter, making me smile wide. "What? Haha, you. I don't think I've ever had a guy end something like that with a formal handshake. You're really something else. Hey, handshakes are universal." "Aha. Sure." She chuckled a bit more before pulling my hand and wrapping me in a hug. "Thanks, John." "Really?" "Of course." We hugged for a while before separating and smiling at each other. "So tell nobody?" "Nope." Smooth. I was worried that things were going to get weird, despite what seemed like a good resolution. But my worries were unfounded. Rayla took it amazingly well, which is what I wanted. She was the one I was worried about, after all. If she had any lingering feelings or if she was just pretending, then she would have no doubt drifted away. But we still continued to talk almost every day, occasionally meeting for a night out, or doing some bigger jobs together. And nothing romantic ever happened. We continued to be great friends, and nobody could sense that anything was different between us besides the fact that we seemed to be quite a bit closer than before. Libitus had come to me a couple days after and asked me how it went since he knew I went back to Rayla's place. And I told him that nothing had happened, that I just slept off my hangover. He sighed in relief at that, totally believing me. That basically concluded everything. That night was one I would never forget. I've had experience with girls on Earth, but nothing had ever been so hot and passionate. None of my past experiences even came close to comparing. I suppose it was because we were both letting out pent-up feelings, knowing that it would be the one and only time. So we poured out everything without inhibition. But given some time to cool down, we both leveled our heads and continued as we had before. Neither of us tried anything, keeping it strictly platonic. Of course, we deeply cared for each other. We were even closer than before, and we'd managed to build something quite unique. It seemed to work, because even a week later, we were still basically best friends. "You're almost there? You've been training for all of what, a month? Something like that. Shit. I gotta admit, even for the low level, that's some talent." Rayla's surprised voice echoed in my mind. I was sitting in my room, the book and white crystal in front of me. I was preparing for another training session, one I sensed would be my last before entering the magisterium. I asked while opening the book and viewing the spell. "How long did it take you? You're at Authority 8, right?" "Yeah. I don't remember exactly, but my first 4 authorities took about 3 years to achieve. Everything after that was a slow crawl. But then again, my talent isn't the greatest. Still, Authority 8 is massive." I let out a breath. The maximum level achievable was Authority 12. So while there was technically an uncrossable chasm between them, Authority 8 was still amazingly high. Rayla was powerful, that much I knew. And that was despite her getting injured whenever we ran jobs. The reason she got injured was because, unlike me, she was dealing with truly powerful opponents. It was like when Plex came back from the trenches with the shit kicked out of him after meeting Apocryon. According to my experience thus far, the best I could handle was an Authority 3 Knight and up to Authority 5 Warlocks and Summoners being an Authority 2. But even that was only doable because nobody knew the nature of my weapons. Knights were my bane because, unlike Warlocks or Summoners, they didn't need to preemptively prepare defenses to survive a bullet. I couldn't imagine Authority 8 Knights, and I barely understood the crazy powers of an Authority 8 Warlock. Whenever Rayla battled, she would always disappear for a while. That was to keep me out of the crossfire. So I never actually got to witness the full power of someone at that level. But the flattened buildings, crevices in the ground, and the occasional sounds I would hear gave away the fact that it was a whole other league. Rayla chuckled. "When you get to that level, you start to realize that no amount of power you attain is truly massive. Things only reach further and further extremes the higher you climb. The you as an Authority 2 might see an Authority 8 or 9 as some kind of god. But as an Authority 8, I've met authority tens that seem like gods, and those above them. I couldn't fathom their power, let alone try to reach it. She sighed, her words making me realize just how insane those levels were. Besides, I'm not even a good authority 8. A good authority 7 could match me just fine. Please, you're amazing as is. Plus, the higher you go, the more problematic things get. Would you really want to live that kind of life? No. I wouldn't. So then you're golden. Thanks. Now go train. I expect to see some new summons tomorrow since you've been yapping about how amazing they're going to be. Right. I smiled, and after some goodbyes, we hung up. Picking up the book, I started forming the spell that I had already memorized. And with the crystal, I used its energy to drive the spell and expand my power. Like last time, I was close to unlocking the 3rd star. It took a lot more energy than last time, at least several times more. And yet, I had gotten this far much faster than prior. It was because I had finally gotten used to forming these complicated spells. And without that barrier, most of my time was spent training. In that sense, it had actually taken longer to train, being 4 weeks of accumulation instead of 3. Regardless, everything was coming to a head. The feelings were almost identical to last time. The energy reached a tipping point, and then, the barrier of the star was broken through. With a massive drain in energy, the 3rd dimension was opened. I slumped in my bed, my mind exhausted. The outpour. But keeping myself awake, I observed what few spirits I could see in the dimension. And the sight caused me to smile. 6-shooter revolvers. Lever-action rifles. Break-action shotguns. Old-school weapons, no doubt. It was the kind of stuff you would see in depictions of the Wild West. There weren't semi-automatic pistols or rifles, not even pump-action shotguns. But these weapons meant a vast jump in survivability for me. Also, with my increased pool of psyche, I could empower my spirits more, meaning more overall killing power. With that, I passed out in glee. I was really looking forward to the future. Yeehaw, motherfucker. Boom. I let out a shotgun blast toward the man in front of me. His body unceremoniously went flying, his chest turned into paste. I wiped some blood splatter off my face, turning toward the others. See that, assholes? I've got an upgrade. The American is stronger. Shit. Just give me that damn coin. From a distance, a bold but inexperienced warlock prepared a couple spells. But with a flick of my wrist, the shotgun was put away and a rifle took its place. Firing a .30-30 cartridge, this wooden-bodied beauty was a monster that had already made my life easier in several ways. Particularly, in this way. Boom. Another explosion shook everyone's ears, even mine. And across the way, the bold warlock looked down to find a new hole in his chest. He had even put up some kind of magical barrier, but it had done absolutely nothing to stop the bullet. I had already become notorious in the trenches, so much so that not many came to bother me anymore. The only ones who came were those in groups. And everyone knew that when I aimed my boomstick, the person on the end of it would get hurt. So they used their brains and started preparing barriers. Before, they might have had a chance to mitigate some of the damage. But with these new weapons, I was about to enter a whole new level of notoriety. I could see everyone look at me like I was a freak as I breathed in the wonderful scent of gunpowder smoking out of the barrel end. Anyone else? I've got enough lead for you all. Fuck. They grit their teeth, and ultimately, they ran away. I smirked and waltzed my way out. But before long, there was someone who stepped in my path. He snarled at me. Remember me, American? Didn't I run away from you one time? I scratched my head while looking at the short man who appeared. He had no shirt, showing off his bulky muscles, and a nasty scar in his abdomen. I put that scar there with my flintlock while I was injured and running away. I only recognized him since he really was short. I called him a gremlin no few number of times. What, you back for revenge? Fucking gremlin. Call me that again one more time. He grit his teeth as his muscles bulged in rage. I smiled. Just get your stubby feet over here, gremlin. Ag! With a bellow, the little man came charging at me. At the same time, I raised the rifle. Bang 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 bang. I let out 4 shots. One hit his leg, one hit an arm, and the other 2 landed somewhere in that pile of ABS. But he only stumbled in surprise before continuing. Is that all you got? You summoners are trash. Frowning, I waved my hand, grabbing the shotgun and throwing in 2 new shells with skillful hands. In that time, he closed the distance even with me backpedaling. Eat this slug. Boom. This time, he couldn't be so arrogant. Though, I would give him a bit of internal praise. Instead of getting his head outright blown off, he only lost an arm. Gah! He dropped while clutching his empty shoulder socket. But perhaps riding the wave of shock, he quickly stumbled back up and moved to take me down. You're dead. 2 shells, dumbass. And that was it. Boom. I put a hole in his chest, causing him to freeze. He stood there for a few seconds before I pushed with my barrel, knocking him to the floor. I smiled as blood soaked the dirt ground beneath him. I've told everyone to just leave me alone. Besides, it's not like I got my gold just sitting in my pockets. Now look at you. Dead. Was it worth it, Gremlin? I stepped over his corpse and continued walking. When I finally got out of the trenches, I walked around before finding a specific bar. It was there that I saw Rayla standing outside, who noticed me and waved. Hey, sweet cheeks. You're covered in blood. And this time, none of it's mine. I even killed that gremlin from some time ago. Yes, those weapons of yours are insane. You're also more aggressive than usual. She laughed while pulling out a handkerchief, wiping my face down. Then, she smirked. You forgot to wear your air mask. No wonder you're enjoying yourself so much. Oh, crap. I suddenly remembered that. Normally I had it on while in the trenches, but I forgot it today. I was cleaning it yesterday. I think I forgot it in my bathroom. Of course you did. Well, getting high for just one day is fine. There. She finished cleaning and pat my cheek. Now let's get a drink. Libitus and the others are already inside. Sure. We smiled and went inside, meeting the others and having a small post-work party.